Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special business meeting of the District of Squamish for September 25th. Halton Squallow and Quees Tiluktumat Squamish, Awayomel. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. There is an agenda in front of council. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Blackman-Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries. We have...
Point of order, could we please get that turned up?
Can everybody hear me? Let me try again. By the way, Sasha, it's not a point of order. Can everybody hear me? Is that better? Can everybody hear me? Excellent. Try this again. Please, if at any point you can't hear any of the members of council, please just put your hand up and wave, and I'll try to make sure everyone can hear. So we have on the agenda a couple timed items. First off, we have 2 public hearings, and I would like to note that these are the last public hearings of my time in office, so I might have some champagne later if we make it through the day. But first up we have, and I'll just ask if people come into the meeting late that they try to be as quiet as possible. Thank you. First up, we have the public hearing for the land use contract termination and CD 91, 38201 3rd Avenue. As with every public hearing, I need to recite this statement. This public hearing is convened pursuant to Part 14, Division 3 of the Local Government Act to allow the public to make representations to council respecting matters contained in District of Squamish Land Use Contract Termination Bylaw, Squamish Senior Citizens Housing Society Bylaw 2621, 2018, and District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw number 2200, 2011, Amendment Bylaw CD 91, 38201 3rd Avenue, number 2563, 2017. Everyone present shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. No one will be discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, it is important that the remarks be restricted to the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Members of council may ask questions following presentations. However, the function of council at a public hearing is to listen rather than to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw. In considering the proposed bylaw, council has received documents which may influence its decision. These documents are available for review and comment and have been included as part of the Planning Department report, or if received later, handed out at the meeting and included in the public hearing package. If any documents are submitted during the hearing, please feel free to review the document during the hearing by asking staff. Members of the public shall maintain order and quiet, and shall not applaud or interrupt the speech or actions of members of council or any other person addressing council. I now call on the Planning Department to introduce the bylaws.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessie Fletcher, planner with the Community Planning and Infrastructure Department. Tonight I'm presenting Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 2563 and Land Use Contract Dissolution Bylaw number 2621 for the public hearing and consideration of third reading. Both bylaw amendments are for the parcel located at 38201 3rd Avenue. This is one of 2 applications that were submitted concurrently as part of a partnership between the Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society and the applicant. One is for a rezoning of 38201 3rd Avenue. This would permit a mixed-use market condo building to be built on this property. This is the property shown in red on the screen. For the purpose of this public hearing presentation, staff will refer to this parcel as Lot A. The other application is for a development permit for a new building for subsidized seniors rental housing at 38275 3rd Avenue. This would replace the Cedar and the Manor, while also increasing the number of subsidized rental units available to seniors in the community. On the screen, this is the parcel in yellow. Staff will refer to this as Lot B throughout the presentation. These 2 applications have been previously presented together because the development permit at Lot B will only proceed if the rezoning at Lot A is successful. This is part of the agreement between the Senior Society and the applicant. Tonight's public hearing pertains specifically to the rezoning and land use contract termination bylaw for 38201 3rd Avenue, and that's Lot A on the screen. So some background first. Lot A and Lot B were acquired by the district in 1964 as part of a larger land acquisition from the Pacific Great Eastern Railway. The district acquired 56 acres of land known as Block R for $60,000. Block R is shown above, outlined in red. It encompasses what is now the Eaglewind neighborhood, the Chieftain Center Plaza, and the Chieftain Center Mall, and the Cedar and the Manor residences. In 1968, the district offered a portion of what is now Lot A to the Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society. This is the portion in yellow above. The Cedars was built on the yellow portion of Lot A in 1972 and continues to offer 20 units of affordable rental housing to senior citizens. Block R was further subdivided in 1975 and gifted to the society to accommodate the Manors, which offers 50 units of senior housing, and this is the green portion of Lot A. During the subdivision, a land use contract was used to zone the land. In it is a provision that all construction must be completed by the end of 1977, and it ties the site to the 1968 zoning bylaw. This land use contract is still in place and prevents the development of anything new on site until it is discharged either by district bylaw or in 2024 when all land use contracts are discharged province-wide. In 2002, the district gifted an additional 3.6 acres to the society. This is Lot B and included the parcel to the south where Shannon Falls Retirement Residences are now located, and that's the strip in purple above. A housing agreement was registered on title that required that the site provide non-market seniors housing. The housing agreement was approved by Squamish Housing Agreement Bylaw number 1726 in 2002. In 2007, the DP site was further subdivided, that's Lot B. The southern portion of the site was sold for the development of the Shannon Falls Retirement Center. A new housing agreement was drafted, and the Shannon Falls Retirement Center provides 20 assisted living units for seniors in addition to the market units. So today, a development permit for 232 units of subsidized seniors housing is proposed for Lot B to replace and expand the existing housing on Lot A. This DP will only be considered by council at a later date if this rezoning is successful. Lot A at 38201 3rd is proposed for rezoning that would allow for the eventual development of a mixed-use development on site. In the agreement between the applicant and the society, the applicant has agreed not to pursue development of Lot A until the proposed housing at Lot B is built and all residents have been relocated to the new site. A rezoning application has been received, again at 38201 3rd Avenue. The parcel is shown with the red outline on the screen. Lot A is located downtown on the corner of 3rd Avenue and Pemberton Avenue, located immediately adjacent to the Shannon Falls Retirement Residences. The site fronts 3 roads, Eaglewind Boulevard, 3rd Avenue, and Pemberton Avenue. Currently, there are 2 buildings on site. The Cedars and the Manor, both multi-unit residential buildings which provide a total of 70 subsidized rental units for senior citizens. The site is currently owned and run by the Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society. The site has a land use contract on title, as we said, and underlining multiple unit residential, that's RM3 zoning. This application proposes to rezone the site to a comprehensive development zone, CD91. The site will be subject to development permit areas 2 and area 3. The proposed rezoning would allow a mixed-use building with commercial at grade and residential above. The building would be proposed to reach a maximum of 6 stories with a maximum permitted height of 22 meters. Key zoning statistics are outlined on this slide. The applicant has proposed a floor area ratio of 1.8. The proposed zone would require that 10% of the gross floor area be employment space, which would front 3rd Avenue, Pemberton Avenue, and Eaglewind Boulevard. Childcare is among the proposed permitted uses in the zone, classified under neighborhood commercial use. And the developer has indicated that if possible, they will build some employment space to provincial standards for a childcare space. That space would include some of the proposed park space. The remaining 16,976 square meters of residential space would create approximately 195 residential units. A 5-meter building setback is proposed on Pemberton Avenue and 3rd Avenue, while a 3-meter setback is proposed along Eaglewind Avenue and along the rear setback. The proposal includes a small park, 1,100 square meters, or approximately 11% of the site area, which would be located on the southwest corner of the site. The portion of the site is shown in green above. The park will be activated by the applicant and secured with a statutory right-of-way for public access in the land development agreement. Following the rezoning, a development permit will be required. The developer has agreed not to proceed with the development of the site until the seniors rental site is built and all current residents have moved. No TB has been submitted at this time. The developer is offering to provide a community amenity contribution that exceeds the amount outlined in the draft CAC policy, reviewed but not approved by council. The developer is proposing $15 per square foot of total square footage, which makes for a CAC of approximately $3.65 million, which the developer has indicated they'd like to be dedicated to the Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society to help with their proposed development. The CAC would enable the development of 232 units of affordable rental housing for seniors and would be the largest affordable rental project in Squamish to date. The developer is also proposing publicly accessible and activated park space located at grade and again totaling approximately 1,100 square meters. If the developer followed the draft community amenity contribution policy, their total contribution would be approximately $3 million and be dedicated between active transportation, park amenities, and either the Community Amenity Provision Fund or Affordable Housing Reserve. The project's informants with the official community plan policies are found in your report this evening. A brief summary is provided on this slide and range from increased employment space and opportunity to securing quality usable parkland. As a condition of scheduling a public hearing, the developer was to hold a public information meeting. A public information meeting was held on August 28th, and there are approximately 125 attendees. Public hearing notices were sent to property owners and tenants within 100 meters of the subject site, and newspaper ads were run in the September 13th and September 20th editions of the Squamish Chief. Over 70 comments have been received to date. Slightly more comments were in favor than opposed. Most letters spoke to the rezoning as part of the overall agreement between the society and the applicant, rather than just to the rezoning itself. And those in favor often cited an urgent need for more affordable seniors housing and the need to replace the existing aging facilities. Those not in favor of the rezoning often cited the following reasons: that they were not supportive of the partnership between the society and the applicant. They were not in favor of the proposed height of the rezoning, including concerns regarding the potential for shading of the neighborhood, and there was some concern raised regarding the proposed commercial uses. The applicant has provided shadow studies showing a 6-story building built at setback along 3rd Pemberton and Eaglewind, and the shadow that would be created at different times of the year. Above is a shadow study done for June at 10 a.m., noon, and 2 p.m. And in this set, shadow study showing the shadow cast in September and March at 10 a.m., noon, and 2 p.m. If, following the results of the public hearing, council decides to consider and approve third reading, a land development agreement would be entered into with the applicant that would do the following things. It would secure the park as publicly accessible via a statutory right-of-way and require activation of the park by the developer. The developer would build a path along the northern floodway right-of-way, and the land development agreement would prevent the site from acquiring a building permit until residential occupancy had been given on Lot E. And public hearing tonight is to consider the following bylaws.
Thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions for clarification purposes? Seeing none at this time. Councillor Chappelle?
Are there any timelines for building the senior center as well? Or once the deal's made, is it up to the developer to decide when to build the seniors housing?
Through you, Mayor Heinzman, the Senior Center Lot B currently has a development permit in stream. It would be considered by council at a later date, and it would be between the applicant and the society to pursue construction. So.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions for clarification purposes? Councillor Blackman-Wolf?
I wonder if staff can explain the community amenity contribution, since we started our policy, has it ever been dedicated specifically a community amenity to a specific organization, or is this a first time for that? Because I know typically we devote the community amenity contributions to the district's affordable housing reserve or other reserves as fit. And could we also explain what the percentages are for this area of downtown, how the CAC breaks down as far as our current policy and the draft policy?
Thank you. I can speak to the normal operating procedure for accepting CAC contributions when they go to another party. It's not often, but we've had them in the past. The one I can think of was a contribution, I believe, to the Squamish Off-Road Cycling Association a few years ago. They are not often, in this case, because the contribution is going directly to creation of affordable housing. Staff was supportive of the proposal.
And Jesse, maybe you can speak to the allocations in the policy.
So within the policy, off the top of my head, I believe it's the majority of the contribution is directed towards the Affordable Housing Fund and or Capital Reserve Fund, where it's 50 cents per square foot towards parks acquisition, and then $1.50 per square foot towards active transportation or in lieu of actual construction.
So would it be fair to say, though, like, could you find the exact percentage and maybe let us know in a little bit? Going
So
to
I believe
affordable housing?
The $15 per square foot would go into a general fund as per our policy, that's draft, which has replaced the interim policy that we used to have, which I believe would have 75% for affordable housing. In this case, the new draft policy would direct $15 per square foot into a general fund that then council would choose whether to spend it on affordable housing or something else.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions? Don't see anyone. I now invite the applicant or the public to speak to this rezoning and this land use contract lifting. After I've confirmed it is your turn, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization. And please note that speakers will be given 5 minutes to address council. I do have a list of speakers here. If you don't feel comfortable saying your exact address, you don't have to say that, but if you could say the neighborhood you live in, that would be helpful. First up, we have Bill Berg, and on deck, David Caldwell. If I say your on deck name, if you could start to make your way towards the podium, that would be helpful.
Do I have to press a button?
You don't have to do a thing except speak into the microphone.
Thank you. My name is Bill Berg, and I'm from Brockendale.
There you go.
Okay. Bill Berg from Brockendale.
Thank you.
I would like to state right out front, I'm not in favor of the project as it is presented at this time, and I will name the reasons. It is, when you look at the brochures, it is a wonderful project, and I think just about everybody would like to live there if they couldn't afford their own. However, the cost of the project is really frightening to me because of all the donations from just about every level of government and the sale of 2.6 acres of land that was designated by previous councils for the use, exclusive use of senior housing. and the constant need for donations in lieu of taxes, or whatever you call this arrangement, which has been going on in the past, and I have no complaints about. But it is a constant cost item that has to be applied to this project. And there is an awful lot of grants from several levels of government, and a preferable mortgage at the percentage of 1% interest, which is wonderful, and I think just about everybody would like to get one. The other things that worries me about this is the operating model that they're using, and that has been used in the present Cedars and Manors, which proved that over time they managed to pay off their mortgage, but are not able to generate any money for future developments of that kind. So every time when one of the present units becomes obsolete, they have to go back to council, governments, and so on to acquire land and for the building cost. I do not know if that operating model can be changed by the society itself, but I think it probably has to, because once this project is not feasible anymore or has outlived its use in about 14, 15 years, there's nothing. There is nothing left. Even after all the years of operation of this unit, it is in a state of disrepair, and it has to be broken and torn down, especially the cedars. I understand there's about $1 million in reserve, and that $1 million is kind of earmarked for upkeep or whatever. If this program goes through as proposed, the cedars would be demolished. Demolishing of a project that has 50 housing units would be destroyed when it still has, according to the society, 10 to 15 years of life left.
Bill, I'll ask you to wrap up your comments.
okay.
I'm already over 5 minutes. You can come back and speak later in the
Okay.
program as well.
Yeah, so on the basic of the business model, on the basics that land that was supposed to be giving to the seniors housing in perpetuity, which allowed it to build on one side, remodel the other side, and keep flipping, I cannot support it,
Thank you.
and I ask council to reject the application. Thank you.
Next up, we have David Caldwell, and on deck, Herbert Vesley.
Thank you, Your Honor and Council. for organizing this public forum. First, I'd like to address the rezoning of the property known as 38209. That's where I live. This property has provided a home for seniors for 46 years. Laura and her crew have been working hard for years to build a new complex. The most they could afford without selling 38209 was 40 units. When this property is rezoned, hopefully tonight, you'll hear that often, recommendation, do it tonight. Only then can this property be sold and enough money will be generated to build 192 more units. The original 40 units plus 192 equals 232, which is in the plan, I believe. The specialty zoning that was put in place to protect our property down the street from development does not have a piece of property empty forever. We must understand that the original purpose of the seniors only zoning was to be a guarantee that a new seniors complex would be built when needed. This specialty designation was not a guarantee an empty lot forever. It was to guarantee a new complex to be built when needed. And in a few minutes, we'll see that it is needed now, not 10 years from now, but now. During the time that the original foresighted people got all this property rezoned so that seniors could be looked after, they always spoke about when a new facility is needed. I've lived here in Squamish for, well, since 1937. It's been my home address. So I know different people. I knew Mr. Brennan, not as friends, but I knew Mr. Reynolds. And they were movers and shakers. And if they were here today, they would not tolerate the abuse of their actions of preserving this property for a new seniors complex. Therefore, we are in total opposition to those who would prevent the rezoning of 38209, whatever the other place is, and the construction of a new senior citizens apartment complex. We want it. That's what we do. We want it because we live there. And now to Your Honor, the Mayor and Council, please allow this new building to be built as soon as possible. And as a number one priority, starting today, starting now. Hopefully, when we all go home, that you will be able to say, okay, let's give it to them. There are many and very expensive repairs looming like a huge deadly hurricane over the two existing buildings. Soon, these repairs will run costs into many thousands of dollars, perhaps tens of thousands. Last year alone, the water main in the Cedars broke 4 times that I know about. Maybe sometimes I don't know about it. But a water line broke in the ceiling of one of the units, and that caused a very extensive damage, and it was very costly to repair. Problems within the manor itself were expensive to repair also. Could go on with a bunch of anecdotes, but we'll stick with a few. As well, there are signs that the buildings have outlived their usefulness. So, as an illustration, pretend that this story is about you. About 4 years ago, I happily moved into Unit 105 of the manor. I'm still happy to live there, and I hope I'll be there for a long time. But to the point, at the time I came here, the toilet would flush on 1 or 2 rinses. This was a bit annoying, but no real problem. Today it takes 2 flushes, often 3, to clear the bowl. It's not so good. Some say that the problem's with my guts and not the plumbing, but I digress. The problem will become even more difficult when it takes 4 flushes to complete the task. For the water in the bowl during the flush rises annually, inch by inch, year by year.
Mr.
It's
Caldwell,
funny, but it's
although,
not.
Mr. Caldwell, although very interesting, I think we should stick to the bylaw in front of us.
Okay. Well, how about the side benefits? There's 2 side benefits to this. One, I don't have to claim the chief to have scary moments, and the other one is I can tell you all you need to know about toilet plungers. So a return to reality. At 1 o'clock today, I returned from downtown to see an unmarked vermin control vehicle parked in front of my home. So, would you like that? No. So our place has a real, it's a downer. So, Your Honor, these costly repairs will produce only temporary relief at best.
Mr. Caldwell, can you wrap up your comments? 5 minutes are up, and if you'd like to come back and speak further, you're
No,
welcome to.
I'll wrap them up. Says, my public thanks to Laura for maintaining a well-run home under the circumstances, and thank you, Your Honor and Council, for listening to me.
Thank you very much. We encourage people not to applaud or to do anything. We want this to be as fair and unrestricted public forum, so I'll ask you, please don't clap, although I think for entertainment value, I understand why you did clap. Next up, we have Herbert Vesley, and on deck, Michael Driver.
This is a hard one to follow. Herbert Vesley, 38626 Cherry Drive. Thank you for the opportunity, Mayor and Council. This is the most important issue facing seniors in Squamish today. The seniors of the future have no voice in this, so we are here to speak for them. A number of seniors I have spoken to were not aware that this deal involves the loss of 2.6 acres of gifted prime seniors' land, the present location of the Cedars and Manor. Permit me to quote Councillor Karen Elliott, who was reprinted in the Chief on September the 13th and said it best. It is essential to think long-term and make decisions not just for the community of today, but for many generations down the road. Seniors Home Society board members Bill Rempel and Peter Gordon are heavy into the development business as consultants. Peter was instrumental on Center Point, which also has some seniors housing.
Mr. Vesley, please stick to the bylaw in hand. I won't allow comments disparaging members of the public
They're
or
not.
volunteers on the board.
Hey, they're not disparaging. I said they have what it takes to make additional housing for seniors happen. Not disparaging, sorry. But I urge them to reconsider their present plan and look for other options. According to the society, Polygon was the only developer who showed any interest. The society wants to have you sanction their business case, which involves, 1, the loss of 2.6 acres of prime downtown seniors housing land, 2, no competitive bidding for the construction of a new seniors housing building, cost $46 million. 3, no independent assessment of the value of the land in trade. The society suggests $10 million. 4, demolition of a manor building, a significant asset with 50 suites, which according to the society themselves has another 10 years plus of life left. Yet the society is convinced that this is the only way forward. I am not. Following my meeting with Peter Gordon last week and getting the needed figures from him to put together a suggested alternative plan for a reduced number of units that could possibly meet our need in this town without the loss of any land. The spreadsheet that resulted I shared with Council. Consider an alternative plan for a smaller project, say 150 units. This results in 200 units in total because the manor building would be left, which is another 10 years plus of life. And no land would be lost to the seniors of the future. I shared this with the society, and in response they tell me that BC Housing's grant must be used now or it will disappear. Well, to that I say, please check again. In all likelihood, BC Housing would not reject a socially more responsible proposal. The society speaks highly of the Kiwanis Richmond project as a guiding light for Squamish, but there are the differences. Kiwanis bought their land in 1959. It was not a gift. The municipality made a contribution of $21 million to their project. We are talking about 3.6. Your vote on these bylaws will impact on future generations of seniors. To vote for them will result in short-term gain for long-term pain. Hit the pause button, please, and ask for a detailed business case for the alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vesely. Please don't clap, thank you. Michael Driver, and on deck, Mike Smith. Please state your name and your address
Yes.
or neighborhood, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Yes, hello, council, mayor. My name is Michael Driver, and my address is 38209 3rd Avenue over here at the Manor and the Cedars that we're speaking of this evening. I'll try to keep it to the point. What I didn't know was that one of the tenants very humorously was speaking of the plumbing in one of the buildings, and I am with two colleagues, a maintenance person there at the said address at the Cedars and the Manor building. And it is truly a serious problem. We've had some serious and costly plumbing issues at the seniors' buildings as of recently, and potentially these would be ongoing. We have the original copper pipes, which are 48 and in one of the buildings almost 50 years old. And we've been having a lot of breakage and leaking in various places, both in the walls, in the internal walls, in the middle of the drywall, which has asbestos, in the ceiling, which has minuscule amounts of asbestos. Myself, having done construction work, I've removed things like this myself by wearing a dust mask and rubber gloves, but now they're saying, oh no, an abatement team from Vancouver has to come. They have to wear hazmat suits, and they're making a big issue of it, incredibly expensive, to the point where the people as tenants in the units are asked to leave. We had one incident where a lady had to leave for a month and a half while her unit was fully being reconstructed. It seemed a bit overkill to me, but that was the law. That's what was required. So we've had leaks in walls that have resulted in the units on the 3rd floor leaking down to the 2nd, the 1st floor. People, in some cases, having to evacuate for a shorter period of time while these issues get resolved. We've had leaks in floors, leaks in ceilings. We've had drainage issues outside underground in front of these buildings where backhoes have had to come in, excavate the land. A little disruptive, a little concerning to the people there, but a lot of us, I live there myself, and we're happy. All of us that live there are happy. We don't want to seem like we're grumbling and complaining because the buildings are old like a lot of us. We laugh and we humor each other with that. These buildings are starting to show signs of wear like us, but it's getting very expensive. We're talking tens of thousands, $40,000 in some cases to repair units. And it does look like something that would be ongoing. So we've got these underwater plumbing problems where we've had numerous breaks, and maybe enough said about that. The other thing that I wanted to address, just speaking from the heart, at the property for the senior society that is undeveloped, and those of us that live where we live right now at present are hoping that the new building can be built. That property, from what I understand, has been empty, dormant, unused for like 48 years. Now, I hear that the government is willing to allocate upwards of $9.5 million towards this project, which seems too good to be true. Very generous. I don't know that in the years to come that would be offered again. It's possible. We, as the tenants that live both in the Cedars building, which there are 20 apartments in the Cedars, that's the lower level apartments, the one-story buildings, and then the Manor is a 3-story building where 50 units. So we have a total of 70 individuals that live over there behind us. We're thankful to be where we are. We're not really trying or wanting to complain about the buildings being old, just that it's getting very expensive. It's hard to get plumbers. We've had 3 different plumbing companies working for us. We mentioned something about people in the Lower Mainland coming up to do some of this work, and oftentimes they tell us they can't do it quickly.
Mr. Driver,
So-
I'll ask you to wrap up your comments.
Just wrapping it up, yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that of the 170 some odd people that, from what we understand, that have come to the office and spoken to the office manager, Laura, asking about accommodation, low-income, affordable housing, yeah, I'm happy and my wife's happy to be
Mr.
where
Driver,
we are.
please wrap up your comments.
But how about all these other people? It's, I think, unfair for us to be selfish and be content where we are and not care about the multitudes of other people that would also like to have what we have, affordable housing. So I am in support of the proposed possible new building to be built on the present empty land. Thank you.
Thank you, and there will be an opportunity if you'd like to continue your comments later, but we're going to try to restrict everyone to 5 minutes initially, so we can make sure we get through the list and be respectful of everyone's time. And if people want to make further comments, we can come back to you. We'll be here until there's no more hands in the air. Mike Smith, and then on deck is Karen Purcell. Please state your name and address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Your Honor, Council, my name is Mike Smith, and I've lived across the street for about 8.5 years. I've lived in Squamish for over 38.5 years, and I've seen a lot of change. Change happens whether we like it or not. There are 3 ways of dealing with change. 1, adapt. 2, run away, which a lot of people have already done. And 3, stand there and defy, protest, and get run over by change anyway. Which brings me to my first point, or my second point. This project is not about us exclusively. It is about the day after tomorrow and the day after that. It's all about providing adequate, affordable housing for seniors in this community in the future, as well as today. If this project does not go through, the money that has been put aside for this project simply will fly away. And we're back to square one, and we end up with Mickey Mouse ad hoc buildings on our present location that will not address tomorrow at all. And I say this, let's knock off all the ballyhoo and the palaver that's gone over the last 2-3 years that council has had to put up with, and let's get this project done. Rezone today. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Karen Purcell, and on deck is Moira Croy. And just for everyone's, council won't be voting on this today, particularly in public hearings of this magnitude. Council will have a week, and it will be addressed the first week of October at the regular business meeting. Karen Purcell, come on up. State your name and your address or neighborhood, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
They say good things come in short packages. My name is Karen Inman Purcell, and I live on 1573 Scott Crescent. My main concern is, well, I'm a fresh senior from the East Coast, and when I first came here, one of the things I noticed, the seniors of our community, I see them very well referred to and spoken of. Especially the native elders are very revered, and I find that very interesting because the allocation of today and tomorrow, today's okay, but for tomorrow, we need these housings availability. There are so many people like myself who live in situations that are not feasible, are not, well, mine has a lot of questions about it. It's called pails that go in certain spots, you know, when it rains. But I'll keep this short and sweet. I am very much in favor, and many of my friends are too, of the proposal and making use of the funds so that seniors, other than the few that are accommodated now, can have the advantage of enjoying what we've never had. That's a new home, something very close to uptown. A lot of us don't have cars, and therefore, I hope that the right decision is come to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Moira Croy, and on deck, Shanna Murray. Welcome.
Hi, I'm formerly of the Cedars and presently living on Buckley Avenue with my sister. Okay? I don't think I'm going to take the whole 5 minutes. My main concern here is there are a lot of people that are living in the Cedars and the Manor right now that are wondering how in heaven's name they're going to afford living in the new building. It's my understanding that it's going to be considerably more expensive. They're going to have to pay for their own heat. They're going to have to pay for their own TV. All of these things that are now provided for them. There are going to be people that are going to have to choose between how much they eat, per se, as to whether they can watch their favorite TV program, etc. And that's my main concern. I'm not for it or against it. I'm against it in the fact that I see the seniors getting squished in to this spot that's going to have all kinds of commercial. It's going to be almost downtown, which in one way is a good thing because they're going to be able to go do their shopping and do their stuff. But they're also going to be, in my opinion, a lot more vulnerable. They're vulnerable enough as it is right now in a space that's relatively not high density. You know, there are people walking through the place, there are people stealing out of cars, there are all this type of thing going on. So I'm against it until I figure out, or you figure out, it's not me to figure out exactly where are the people who can't afford to go into the new building, where are they going to go? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shanna Murray, and on deck, Virginia Dick.
So my name is Shanna Murray. I am the interim executive director with the Women's Center. And on behalf of the Women's Center, we are in favor of the rezoning. I've been with the Women's Center for about 14 and a bit years, and so I've seen a fair bit of change. And with the clients that access our Women's Center, we do have a fair amount of seniors. And one of the biggest things that we see is the lack of affordable housing. And so by affordable, meaning seniors who are on subsidies or very small pensions. And so what we're seeing is that individuals are having to live in unsafe housing conditions, and so with that comes a lot of other issues. And so we see this project as being able to support a lot of seniors in our community in hopes that by providing a safe roof over their heads, then it will alleviate some of the other things that are going on in their life, or at least they're able to work at it from a place of having a roof over their head. So again, thank you, Mayor and Council. That's it.
Thank you very much. Virginia Dick, and on deck, Sasha Fabry. Please state your name and your address or neighborhood, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
I'm representing senior citizens, and I'm Virginia Dick, and I live in Garibaldi Highlands. I just jotted down a few things here today. Just to repeat on the fact that the people now living in the Cedars, they get a safer benefit, which I am paying $1,300 a month rent and get a safer benefit. So it would be nice if it could be evened out a little bit, because there's, like you say, only 70 places there, but there's so many people in need. And I also believe that the pause button has been pressed and stuck, because when I first came here in 2015, I came here because I was told in 2017 there would be the affordable housing that I could qualify for. And then 2017 came, and it was 3 more years. And so it's now 2018, and nothing's been improved, but my rent still increases every year. So it's come to the point where, when I first moved here, I thought I could pay a little bit more than what I was paying there because my family's here. It's the only family I have. And so now, you know, with all the rent increases, I don't know if I can even stay in this province. I might have to go somewhere where I can afford to live. But anyways, getting over to the building now is 50 years old. The pipes, the plumbing, electrical, just like that gentleman said that was on the maintenance, you know, the need is now, not to preserve the land for future people. We need something now. And really, I think we're only like one flush away from condemning that building, so. Thanks for hearing me, and I hope this can go forward.
Thank you. I can see there's going to be a theme to the meeting. Sasha Fabry, and on deck, Jay Russell.
Hi, folks. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? I'm a bit tall. I'm not sure of this. A few days ago, I was having a conversation with former Mayor Corinne Lonsdale.
You just state your name and your
pardon me.
address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization. Thank you.
Sasha Fabry, 41604 Grant Road, Brackendale. And today I am just representing someone who is unable to be here today, but nevertheless would like their questions asked. A few days ago, I was speaking with former Mayor Corinne Lonsdale, and she unfortunately is unable to be here today, but did have questions that she's hoping council could ask, some of which I believe you have already answered, staff, and I apologize if I make you repeat yourselves. She has also submitted a letter, which she hopes everyone will be reading, the highlights of which she would like to make sure that her views are very much opposed to the present initiative, and she understands that the land designated for seniors is to enable seniors in Squamish to age in Squamish, and by terminating the LUC, what will effectively be happening is enabling many seniors to relocate here from other proposed seniors complexes, and as well, the other proposed parcel of land will not be specifically for seniors and will be home to families and individuals of all ages. And again, these are Corinne's comments, not my own. A promise is a promise, and I said that I would speak for her, and that's why I'm doing this. Her questions are, how many units of the 200 or so will be given subsidies? I believe the answer was 70, but if you could, staff, repeat yourselves. There's no need to write it down. I can give you this list after the fact, too.
We have the comments from Mayor Lonsdale, and we're going to accumulate all the questions and address them once I've gone through the list.
Of course, yeah. But if staff doesn't have to write it down, I can just give them this after the fact.
Yeah,
being
thank
asked.
you.
She would like to know how many will be market-driven rents, how many proposal calls were sent out, to whom, how much time was given for the response, and what was the proposal call that led us to end with Polygon. Corinne would like to know what zoning regulations will be in place to ensure that any commercial businesses at street level will be selective to cater to seniors, for example, podiatrists' offices, pharmacies, massage, seniors' help aids, and hearing aids. And finally, how do we ensure that local residents are given priority for the area? As for myself, thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing everyone to be here. And the only thing that I hope today is that a decision is made for the benefit of the long term, not simply the short term needs of the community.
Thank you. Jay Russell, on deck, Ray Miles. Please state your name and your address or neighborhood, or if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
It's Jay Russell. I'm at 38024 Squamish Avenue. I'm the Executive Director with Sea to Sky Community Services. I'm very pleased to support the application on behalf of the organization. I think echoing some of Shanna's points, as a service provider, it's important for us to understand the need and complexity of our demographic, of our population.
Jay, just speak right into the microphone if you can. Thank you.
As a service provider, it's important for us to come forward and advocate for those in need. And certainly, in echoing some of Shanna's points, we see firsthand at Sea to Sky Community Services the need as changing demographics affect some of marginalized populations here in Squamish. We're seeing the increase in rental housing stock and price, or increase in rental housing prices, the lack of stock, the benefits, pensions, safer benefits that are limiting seniors in our communities from accessing affordable housing. This project will bring on 232 units and enable a relief to the rest of the units in our housing provider quota that will enable other folks in the community to have access to affordable housing. And I think it's important for organizations like Sea to Sky to understand the needs of these communities, to understand their profiles, their unique benefits to the community as well. And at Sea to Sky, we definitely support this project and other affordable housing projects in the community. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Ray Miles, on deck, Ruth Garant. Please state your name and your address or neighborhood, and if you represent
My name
yourself.
is Ray Miles. I live in the Highlands. I've been there for almost 30 years. And thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for this opportunity. You know, when someone my age decides to come to a meeting like this, there are several don't forgets that enter into it. My wife said, don't forget your glasses. I've got them. She says, don't forget your teeth. I've got them. She says, don't forget your hearing aids. Well, that's okay. I'll be able to hear you applaud, but then they won't let you applaud. So, anyway, the fourth one is don't forget your notes. And believe me, without my notes, I wouldn't be up here. I've looked at the project, and I've looked at some of the numbers that I've been able to get my hands on, and frankly, there's a lot to like about it. It replaces some, as been described, pretty sketchy housing, and it will replace it with something that is a lot better and will last a lot longer. It also cleans up the waiting list. I understand there was a waiting list for the present accommodation, and they also have a number of people who have signed up to fill up the new one, and that's good. The financial picture looks on the face of it to be feasible if everything goes the way it's supposed to, but it won't. It never does. How many projects of this kind have you been involved in where everything went smoothly and there was no hiccups along the road? There never is. There's always something. I like the fact that the mortgage, I had to assume because I didn't know for sure that it is also through BC Housing and that it is not, there is no term attached to it. It is a 1% mortgage of an indefinite duration. Is that correct? Does anybody know anything different?
You caught me mid-apple. BC Housing is here, so I'm sure they will speak to it.
Okay. Because if it wasn't for an indefinite duration, any future attempt, say in 5 years' time, to bring it up to market financing would be really disastrous to this project. It's not just, I don't think it's just a matter of affordability right now. There's also a question of what the eventual cost is going to be to the people who live there, and whether they are going to be able to hang on to their safer
Subsidy.
Yeah. I understand that the society has applied for some relief from these safer regulations, but I don't believe they've had any news on that lately. The situation with regards to this council is rather unique. I don't think it actually brings, I think, new meaning to the phrase lame duck. I think 90% of you will not be back in the new year for the new council. And if you don't, if this thing is not done right, then it'll be up to the new council to shoot the bullets that you're making today. I shouldn't have brought these. This is a subsidized project. Somebody asked how many of the units are subsidized. They are all subsidized. There's $9 million of money from the provincial government. There is a mortgage at probably less than half of the current market rates. I don't know whether they're paying taxes or utilities or any of that stuff. I didn't get that information, whether they're doing, but at any rate, each of these things represents a subsidy. Even those who qualify for SAFER are being subsidized. So make no bones about it, this is a heavily subsidized project with public money, taxpayers' money. So it's not something that the council can just say, oh, all we have to do is sign off and then it's up to them. They have to go ahead and make a go of it. That's not true. It's your responsibility to look at this thing and make sure that it's done right. And for that reason, I would recommend that, in view of the fact that you're not going to be around to deal with the fallout, that you put off third reading on this bill and leave it to the new council. Then at least if they sign off on it, they will have to deal with consequences.
I'll ask you to wrap your comments up, please.
Pardon me?
Your 5 minutes are up. Can you just wrap your comments up, please?
Oh, yes. Well, I'm just about finished. You know, I'll say something else. It may not seem relevant, but back in the last century, the UBC brought in a new chairman. Her name was Martha Piper. And I won't comment on what kind of a job she does. I think she was perfectly adequate. But at her first public appearance, she wore a baseball hat. And on that baseball hat were some words. No, it wasn't "Make America Great Again." The 3 words she had on her hat were, "Think about it." Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ruth Garant, and on deck, Jacques Tricond, or Tricond.
I didn't know I was this short. Anyway,
Please state your name and your neighborhood, and thank you.
Okay, my name is Ruth Garrett, and I live at 38209 3rd Avenue in the Squamish Manor. And I was born and raised here, and I like Squamish. Laura, if you're here, thank you for all the hard work you've done to get us where we are today. You know the old saying, if you snooze, you lose. Well, you're definitely not a snoozer. Well, we need to go forward and have a new seniors built now. We need it now. We can be thankful that we have this property to be sold. Did you ever think of that? We have to go forward, and it's up to us to make it happen. We have to realize it's for the next generation. We can be proud to be a generation of doers and help the next generation of seniors to follow us and complete the project. Time is running out, so let's put good money into the future and tear down the old. I'm definitely in favor of having this new seniors place. And it'll be nice to have it all new. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jacques Tricond, please forgive me if I pronounce that incorrectly. And on deck is Naomi Brunemeyer.
Good evening, thank you, Your Honor, council members. That's not my intent. Well, first, my name is Jacques Tricand. I live on 3354 Eaglewind Boulevard, not too far from here. And my intent was not to talk tonight, but since I've written notes and emails to all of you, and Doug responded back to me, I appreciate that. I just thought that I'm new to Squamish. I've been here for 3 years, and I think I'm on my way to be senior. Some people think I am, others don't. But I think that when I was looking at the presentation that I attended on August 28th by Polygon, I was taken aback a bit about the process taken and the presentation by Polygon. When I found that the Polygon presentation for their phase 1 was barely adequate from my perspective to make a decision, and for phase 2 was totally nebulous, totally up there, rezone, and we do whatever we want down the road. It's a great gift to them. They want to make a killing on that one. That's why they want to do it. But the more I looked at this, what I found a bit challenging to me is that here we have 2 pieces of land made for senior housing, and we're trading one because we need we want to meet an immediate need right now. We have to be sensitive to it because, you know, there's some people having a hard time right now. And so the short-term need seems to be driving the long-term requirement for seniors. I'll be a senior one day, even though I think I am legally, but there'll be seniors down the road, and we should be very concerned that we look at the future. The second thing that really hit me from a professional perspective, I work in business for over 40 years, and when I found that the seniors had a proposal from a developer on a unsolicited bid, sole bid basis, and they threw a few good numbers, like good GAG contributions, even though the GAG they're proposing is higher than your own draft policy on it, which is a draft policy, so I would go back and redo that policy and make it higher. There's no doubt that it seems attractive, but from a financial perspective, I always recommend don't go with unsolicited bid, sole bid basis, because you're not getting the really bottom line deal. You're not. Believe me, you're not. Looks universe it is, but you're not. And what I find challenging is that the rush. I know it's been around for 2 or 3 years. I know people have immediate needs, but those who have needs today, like flushing toilets, they won't be fixed in the next 2 years because that building will take 2 years to build, if not 3 years to build. So you're still going to be stuck with that toilet, you know, challenging with it. And I really feel for that. Don't get me wrong. I feel for the people having challenging today. And so I've got other issues about the architectural plans and so on, but to me what really concerns me also is, I talked about earlier about phase 2, it's totally up in the air, it's nebulous. They can do what they want, they will do whatever they wanted to do with it, and I'm kind of concerned about that. And the other gentleman saying is that the subsidy to this to this project is not only made by the seniors or by Polygon, but also by the district, etc. And also, a point that was brought up earlier, I want to wrap up here, is that two of you are aiming to be mayor, or would like to be mayor. One of you represent himself again to be a councillor, and the other four are gone. And this will be a lot of issues down the road. And I don't think that the outgoing council should make that decision. I think the new council should come in with fresh eyes, fresh ideas, and also to challenge a bit more this proposal. Even though it looks adequate on the surface, I don't think it is deep down. I heard a few comments about people looking at spreadsheets and so on. I would like to have a look at them, because I'm sure there's other better alternative than this moving forward. So I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I wish you to, I don't want to pause the project, but I want you guys to allow the new council to come in to be able to work on this and to move it forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Naomi Brunmeyer, and on deck, Bob Redford. Please state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization.
Hi, my name is Naomi Brunnemeyer, and I'm the Director of Development at BC Housing for the Lower Mainland. And for the purposes of this application, our address is 1701 4555 Kingsway in Burnaby. So this is my fifth meeting in the last 2 weeks. I have been in Powell River, Chilliwack, Surrey. Last night I was in Richmond, and today in Squamish. So we had a little bit of a joke that this is not my first rodeo. I have looked at numerous proposals. It's very similar to one that's coming before me today, before you today, before your community. That is the gift that is coming here. I was involved in the Richmond project and many other redevelopments, Anavet's in the North Vancouver. And so what I would like to do is just talk about it from BC Housing's perspective of why we may have been captivated by this proposal and why we're committing an allocation of $9.5 million towards this project, and that we would encourage the council of this day that has been working on this project for many, many, many months and years, that you approve it during your term. So why this is a really great project to us is that you have a very phenomenal organization that's a homegrown organization that knows the seniors in your community. You're not coming in and parachuting in a Vancouver organization. They know what's needed for your community. They know your members in your community, and they know the people on the applicant list. They've also had the foresight to come forward before their buildings are actually already fallen down and they have nothing at all. And so what this plan allows them to do is to be able to build a new house, new housing for seniors, without having the other one have to be torn down in the interim. So we're not creating a whole bunch of vacancies by having to evict people because your building's not operational anymore. So having to demolish the site before you have the housing is a problem. And so that's why BC Housing looked at this proposal and said, this is something that's very good to us. It's a phased development, and it's before the economic life end of the building. So there's time to go through municipal processes. So there's time to get a good construction price. And so there's time to actually build the project out before the other one is obsolete. I agree with the concept that the council of the day who gave the land did not give it as a piece of land. They gave it as a resource for a community that can be moved around. And the concept of being too stuck with the piece of land as opposed to the concept, I think, is part of the discussion that's a bit of a challenge for us at BC Housing. So we see an organization that's willing to take a big risk and take on a big financing, a big new number of units, and we see a really great development partner in Polygon. So I'd also like to address the concept of the society doing it on their site or partnering with Polygon. So I met with this society. It's a dirty little secret. I came to talk to them about it before they talked to Polygon. And I said, why don't you run the numbers? Why don't you have a look at what it looks like? And so what's sort of been missing from this dialogue is just how expensive construction is. And so the idea that some board members with some development acumen are going to make a project work on that site without any government assistance and without any equity of their own is flawed. In Vancouver, in any other large municipality, land coming into a deal does not create affordability. That's like a basic in. You have to have a significant amount of other equity and funding sources to come and make these projects work. Because what the reality here is, to keep those rents affordable, you can't have a high mortgage to pay down, which means you need to have a lot of grant equity or whether that be from the sale of their land. And so that's what the society has recognized, that their mandate of keeping those units affordable is more important than that piece of land, and that they've understood that in order to continue to move forward, they needed to bring something to the table. And so by bringing something to the table in that equity position, they captured BC Housing's attention, who said, yes, actually, we are willing to partner. And then we see that there might be a contribution from the municipality in terms of a CAC. And then that's how a deal comes together. It is not just some good development acumen. It takes all levels of government, and it takes some society equity too. And so we look at this deal very positively because there are those levels of support that's involved, and it allows for the affordability to be maintained. With respect to using a developer such as Polygon that potentially didn't have a competitive bid process, well, that's what you do to be able to leverage their expertise. So you've got a builder in Polygon that was already working in your community. And so that's what their value proposition is. They're already here, they have their trades working here, they know the system here, and that's why they can add value to this project instead of going out to the market for tender with an organization or a developer that doesn't have that relationship in the community. And so that's something that we also encouraged, is to lever their strengths, to look for somebody who has a value proposition in this community. We do that at BC Housing the same way. We sole sourced a project with Lettingham McAllister because we knew that it was of value to them as opposed to another developer. We also encourage them to partner with somebody like Polygon because we know that they're trusted. That's my 5 minutes. But I wanted to answer one quick question.
Mine was 5 seconds.
Okay, so I just wanted to answer a couple of quick questions. So the province actually originally came in with 6.5, and to create additional affordability, we added another $3 million to the deal. And that came forward with discussions that we had with the society and with the municipality. So we recognize that affordability is what our key driver is in here. So we added more money to keep more rents lower. SAFER can be applied to this project, so any senior that is eligible is still eligible for their SAFER grant to come into this project. Please note, SAFER comes with a tenant. It doesn't go to the society. So it's who moves into the building so that you can use your SAFER grant here. Just because BC Housing has grant dollars in here and financing dollars in here does not mean that seniors can't bring their SAFER grant with them. They're eligible to do that. The SAFER benefit was expanded to look into the geographic representation, and it's been increased this year with the new provincial government. So that will also be of benefit to people that are living here. One last thing is I wanted to clarify, BC Housing is a benevolent lender, but it isn't 1%. So what we do is we're a construction financer, and so it's about 1.5 right now, so we borrow straight from Treasury. So we allow that mechanism during construction, and in this point we would be lending to the developer to do that, to create even additional affordability so that they don't need to go to a conventional lender and go at a much higher percentage. But this will be tendered out to the conventional lending market. We're a CMHC-backed lender, so we backstop that mortgage. So we say to the banks, this is not going to default, which is why we're an important partner to have in here, which is why we've gone through this pro forma, which is why we think that this is a really good deal, because we have to put our name out. So that's why we've put $9.5 million into it, and why we request that the Council of the Day look at their contribution to keep that affordable and to create that lower mortgage amount that will be sent out to tender.
Thank you very much. Bob Redford on deck, Dennis Smith. Please state your name and address or neighborhood, and if you represent
Bob
yourself.
Redford, Barclay Street, just across from the high school. I didn't really plan on saying anything tonight, but I've only lived in Squamish for 4 years, so I came from Seashelt, which is probably in a similar position of most of you here. Now, I have utmost sympathy for the people who live in the Cedars complex and the problems they're having. I live in a housing complex on Barclay Street, and I don't know if many of you are aware of it, but it's called Mountain View Place, and it's about 70 years, built in 1970. It does not have the water problems, the leaking problems. And I was going to say that one thing it has is a strata council, and they get fees. Part of their fees every month goes to maintenance of the building. So my question is, the Cedars, do they have a similar thing in place? And if not, then future buildings for seniors should be thinking about this. if they're thinking long-term. Now, 50 years is a long time. But if it's well looked after and well maintained, it should be still fine. So that's basically all I want to say. And I think if you're giving the land away, that should never happen. You live for today, and I know we need the extra housing for people that are getting old, but what about people 20 years down the road? That's really important, that they have the land where a place can be built as well. And I'm sure if council and the government pursue it, they can get the funding to build new housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dennis Smith, and on deck, Laura Modry. Please state your name and address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization.
Mayor and Council, my name is Dennis Smith, and I live in the Garibaldi Estates. I'm also a director on the Seniors Home Society. I've been on the board for about 3 years, and I've had a great opportunity to get to know some of our seniors, particularly at some of the luncheons we do, and it's a real pleasure to actually participate and just see, get to know who our tenants are. We are in a housing crisis, and this building is at end of life. Let me just say that again. We are in a housing crisis, and this building is at end of life. Now, I understand and respect folks saying we need to put the pause button and look to the future. But we got a building that's at end of life, and we're in a housing crisis. Our seniors need housing now. We are at a time, since 1970s, that's unprecedented. The amount of money, the opportunity, the partnerships, the fact that developers are wanting to get involved with not-for-profits to build affordable housing has not been seen since the 1970s, post-World War II. All these places were built all over the world. In Canada, we had an incredible amount of units built in the 60s and 70s. And then they were left to sit and just rot. We have a time now, for the first time, where we have the opportunity to build mass amount of units of housing, not just for seniors, but for families and everybody. But for the purpose of this, we need to do this now. Buildings have a lifespan. I have a bit of a facilities maintenance background. I know a little bit about housing. The stages of a building are like this. Childhood. Now, don't get drawn off by the ages. According to a building, childhood is year 1 through 16. Adolescence, year 17 through 29. Adulthood, 30 to 49. It is in the 50-year mark where you start to have to input the most expensive capital investments in a building at age 50, which is the age that this building is at right now. New roofing, new plumbing, perhaps new elevators. The amount of money that has to be invested into a building that may only have 15 years of life left, it's unacceptable. It's not affordable. And in fact, what ends up happening is when you don't have those maintenance things covered, units have to close down because they can't be fixed. Mold begins to build. We can't put anybody in there. That's unacceptable. If we defer maintenance because we can't afford it at a time when this building is the most expensive to repair, our own tenants' homes are going to be insecure. We will not be able to maintain those units. We will not be able to rent out those units, which will also reduce the revenue that you get to simply maintain a building. I understand the purpose of taking Longview. I myself am a product of subsidized housing, and thank goodness that I was able to live in a place with my mom who could afford it. Right now, my mom luckily lives in a very affordable place in Chilliwack. Imagine that, $750 for an 800 square foot home in Chilliwack. What are you going to pay here? $1,600? Ain't going to happen. She ain't moving here. We as the board, have worked very closely with Polygon. We have worked very closely with BC Housing. We think this is a great idea, not just for the citizens that are currently living in that building, but for citizens to come. If we can maintain this building, it can last a lot longer than its 50 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Laura Modry, and on deck, Dennis Honazer. Please state your name and address, and if
Hi.
you represent yourself,
I'm-
business, or an organization.
I'm Laura Modre, Valley Cliff, and I'm the Executive Director for the Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society. I've been in this role for over 10 years now, and our society's mission statement is to provide affordable housing for seniors 55 and older. So about 5 years ago, into my tenure with the seniors, we, the board and I, started noticing two things. The wait list was getting bigger and bigger, and the Cedars were starting to have some significant infrastructure failures, things that we couldn't fix due to design flaw, despite all the maintenance that we threw at it. So it was approximately in 2012 when we started seriously taking a look at how we can expand and replace our housing. We went through the regular route that most nonprofits go. Start with the studies, make sure the need and demand is there, and then figure out, is there feasibility? So the answer was yes and yes. So we did the RFP for a development consultant, and we found one that we wanted to work with. We wanted to max out the density on our existing complex and started to look at what we could afford to build on the back gravel section of the property. We wanted to hold on to the vacant land on the other lot for future development. The development consultant looked closely at our assets and what the funding environment with BC Housing was, and the best outcome that they could come up with was a 40-unit building. So at the time, we thought, great, okay, let's get going. We will, solve the problem for the people in the Cedars. We'll have 20 more units to offer the community, and that's the best we can do right now. So we started on that process. And then, several months later, we were presented with another option. Polygon presented us with an opportunity where we would be able to replace all of our aging buildings all at once, and not just double our current capacity, but triple it. And 232 units all at once. Unbelievable. It's like Christmas for a nonprofit housing provider. Totally. So I need to remind everybody, in the whole history of our society, which goes back 48 years, we've only managed to build 70 units in 46 years. That's all we've been able to do. That land has been sitting vacant for 46 years, with exception to the piece of land that we sold to Shannon Falls Retirement Home. Nonprofit societies that run bare bones like ours have limited capacities when it comes to developing housing. My first thought when I heard 232 units was, oh my God, we could never develop that many units in 100 years. That was my first thought, and I still believe that to this day. So some of the board members were skeptical at first, because who is this Polygon firm? And there's always the big bad developer syndrome. So we spent a lot of time with the Richmond Kiwanis Group, who just recently finished a similar project with Polygon. The Kiwanis Group spent 3 years analyzing the proposal that they had with Polygon. They talked to all the other developers that they could, looking at other alternatives, and at the end of the day, the Polygon proposal for them was by far the best. So the end result for the Kiwanis Group in Richmond was an incredible success. They replaced 122 units that they built in the 1960s with 2 towers, 296 units, all with very affordable rental rates for seniors, as our proposal also is all very affordable. So this is why we're here today. We believe this rezoning will allow us to move forward with the best possible outcome for seniors needing an affordable home. As for the future, we will start working on that as soon as we take care of the present. The future will involve a lot of partnership with other nonprofits, developers, and community groups. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have faith in our nonprofit sector in Squamish, which is incredibly strong for a small community. I also have a lot of faith in our district for starting to develop policy around affordable housing. We will figure this out. But let's start with housing the people who are waiting right now, today. The 175 as of today, 175 people on my wait list are counting on your support to rezone this property so they can also have an affordable place to live. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. The last person on my list is Dennis Honeiser. Hope I got that right. And I'm just looking for staff. Honeiser? Yeah. Thanks. And I'm just looking for staff. If there are any more lists, then please bring it forward.
Hi, my name's Dennis Honeiser. I live in the manor at 3820 3rd Avenue. I've been living in the manor now for the past 3 years. I feel very fortunate to have moved in here, as I am on a fixed income due to my health condition. Affordable housing has allowed me the ability to focus on my health and well-being without the housing problem. I don't know where I would be today without it. So I look at the waiting list of 170 people waiting to get in, and I think about how those people and their well-being and health is. We have an opportunity here to build another building to accommodate all these people and more in the future. So the controversy is over. The society should keep the land. The land's been sitting there for 50 years, I learned tonight. What good's that? What's gonna happen in the next, 20 years? I don't hear any, I've heard controversies about it, but I don't hear any solutions. And it's always putting things off. So the controversy's over, the society to keep the land. So what about the 170 people waiting now today? I live in the manor and I see the money being poured into it, into the building. What's the purpose? And when then an opportunity to build a new building is here, with under the new building codes and, proper place. I worked in construction 30 years and the building's done. That's all there is to it. There's only a life expectancy. And for what we know about, the water in my own suite, drywall coming down that they get cleaned up. Well, that drywall we know now today had asbestos in it. So what's the danger involved there? What about any water leaking through the building that they don't see in the mold that could start? And that happens. I've worked on restorations in Vancouver. I worked on them for a couple of years, and it's sickening when you pull apart a wall and there's mold in behind there. And what it causes, the health conditions that you don't even know, because if it's minimal, you can't sense it. If it's strong, believe me, if I didn't have my mask on, I pull the piece off. It's dangerous, very dangerous. You got to gift the money here, and the society. I believe solely in the society. I mean, the society is the ones who built the building in the first place because they care about seniors. I'm sure they have us all in best interest. And where's the money going to come from to get anything built? Let's take care right now, and there's time in the future. I mean, 40 years it took to get to here to be able to build a building. I'm sure in the next 20 years the city can come up with another plan, or with the provincial government. So I'm all for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Shar, do we have any more people on the list? Nope. What I'll do is I'll just take a quick break here and go to staff and see if there's any questions that we can answer, and then I'll go back out to the crowd and just put your name up, and I'll acknowledge you, and you can come up and speak to at the podium. Don't put your name up, put your hand up. My apologies. Jonas, do you have a list of questions there?
Some of the questions that have been raised were answered by BC Housing and the Society. We can go over some of the questions.
I actually have a question for
Okay.
either Laura or BC Housing, then I'll come back to you. I'm wondering if we can just there was a question about the cost of the new building and whether or not, even with the safer rate, there's going to be more utility costs as a part of this. Is Naomi or probably Laura here, and can they speak to what the overall affordability of these units may be?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
The overall affordability, there's a question about currently at the Cedar and the Manor, things like television and water, sewer, all that stuff's included. How will the overall costs or affordability of the units besides the safer rate, which is individual, as Naomi said.
Okay.
How is that going to be done in the new building?
So in the new building, we have two levels of, two tiers of affordability. The first tier is geared toward what the safer subsidy will subsidize up to, which is, I think it's 765 right now. So we're gearing our lower tiered rents toward that so that people that are receiving safer, like in the manor, lots of people here are getting safer, you go over to the new building and you simply tell BC Housing that you're moving to this new building and this is the new rental rate, and then they will adjust your subsidy. So you'll get more subsidy because you're paying slightly more in your full rent. So the other half of the rents are considered more like 70 to 80% of market, so they're around the $1,000 a month range, and those are kind of geared toward married couples with two incomes, or people that might still be in the workforce that might have some extra income. So you're looking at anyone that's making over $3,000 a month would pay the $1,000 rate. Yeah, next.
Thank you.
Okay, is that it?
Yeah, and just on the safer rate, Laura has been working with us to approach the provincial government to get into the next tier of subsidy.
No, we want to change our geographical location from zone 1 to, from
exactly.
zone 2 to zone 1, and we're going to get it.
I think we're going to get it too, yeah.
Okay.
What about utilities?
Yeah, so the overall cost.
So the rent will include your hot water, hydro will be separate, and BC Housing does have concessions for hydro in their safer subsidy formula, so that will be also subsidized. And Cablevision, sorry, we're not going to provide that in the next building. None of the nonprofits are doing that anymore because a lot of people are moving away from cable and they're using different medias. So we'll look at possibly Wi-Fi, but we don't know at this point.
Thank you, Laura. Jonas, are there questions that were brought up already in the public hearing? And then I'll go back to council to see if there are any questions.
I believe most of the questions were related to the seniors project that's happening on side, the side B. Not a lot of questions on the side that's getting rezoned. There was a few comments made about the district allowing anything to happen on this site that's being rezoned. I just want to clarify that there is a zone that is going to go along with this rezoning, which will regulate the type of uses that can go in, will regulate the open space requirements, which are quite significant in this case. And then the land development agreement will ensure that some of these aspects that cannot be attained after the rezoning are going to get attained, like the park space. And then we will also rely on our development permit area guidelines 2 and 3 to regulate the form and character of the buildings. So there's going to be lots of regulation around the form and character of the buildings and the uses inside.
Thank you. It is a bit of a complicated application because really what's in front of us is not this new seniors building. It's the rezoning and the lifting of the land use contract that will help fund the new seniors building. So it is a bit of a complicated thing.
Yes.
I would just want to make sure that people want to speak to the specific rezoning, make sure you do that as well. I believe Councillor Chappelle has a question. I'll look to council if there are any more.
For the new units, would it be possible to extract some of our affordable housing in the new units as well, the units that go towards other families that are affordable? I know that our policy states we've just been looking at around 10%, even 5%, like the Garibaldi Springs project donated 5% affordable housing. Would it be possible to extract, and is it possible after the rezoning to negotiate units, or is this the time that we'd have to negotiate units?
This would be the time to negotiate any units. We have had extensive discussions with the applicants around the community amenity contribution and the value of all of the CAC to go towards the seniors housing. And the rationale that the applicants have provided is that it makes a lot more sense. It produces a lot more unit to put all of the CAC into this seniors project. So the proposal in front of us is to put all of the CAC money into the seniors project.
Extracting CAC money, I understand that, but is it possible to also obtain, we're giving up our future seniors land, but and we'll have a discussion on that at the rezoning after everything's done. But extracting units for the future of the community as well out of a large complex, a large market, full market, no rental complex would also be of benefit to the future community and to the seniors in the future as well.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, that would come at a cost to the seniors project.
Is it one or the other? I think we're doing the rezoning, and it's our land, it's the seniors' land right now. This would be the time to ask, and if I can't see even a few units, that the project would leave the table for a few units of non-market housing.
Yes, and we've had those discussions with the applicants, and the proposal that has come in front of us was to put all of the CAC towards the seniors' housing.
That CAC, though, meets our interim policy for donation of cash, correct?
Yes, it exceeds it.
But not units.
But not the units, that's right.
And can I ask one more question?
Can I follow up on that?
Yep.
As a condition of rezoning, can we put in a purpose-built rental within the new development?
We'd have to go back to the discussions with the applicants on that point.
Thank you. Go ahead.
The other thing I was looking at, and I really appreciate the information from Richmond being included in the package, and maybe Mrs. Beaudry can answer this question, or I'm not sure if staff can answer the question. There's an extensive list of partners that are contributing to the Richmond project, and including Vancouver Coastal Health and BC Hydro and the Crisis Services and a Gerontology Center. Were any other partnerships looked at with the Polygon partnership? Polygon is one partner out of this extensive list of partners. Is it possible to bring in other partners to reduce the strain on the Seniors Housing Society?
I think I would refer that question to the society.
Does a board member or Laura want to answer that question, please?
Hi.
Thanks, Laura.
We did look at possibly forging a few connections with Vancouver Coastal Health, and we tried to engage Squamish Nation as well. With respect to the other clubs or whatever it was on the list, yeah, no. But we did do our best to try and engage our local community groups as much as possible. And another, barrier for us too is not being a charitable society, so we can't accept charitable donations. So we really had to pull together the resources that we could.
Is Kiwanis a charitable society?
I don't know for sure.
They're also the same housing society, and they have an extensive list of partnerships.
Yeah.
So
I'm not 100%
gerontology
sure if they
centers,
have
things like
charitable status or not. I have a feeling they might, but I can't say that for sure.
that. Thank you.
Council, any other questions at this point? Councilor Pryor.
I wonder if you could bring up the map showing Lot A and Lot B on the screen. So that's good, right there. So in Lot A, there's nothing to be said that seniors units can't be built in there, right?
That's correct. The zoning would not prevent that.
Yeah.
It's not specific to the type of tenures.
And not necessarily affordable, but in the project itself, if seniors want to move in there, they can have, is it an adapted suites? I mean, didn't I hear there was gonna be some adapted suites in the A building?
Through you, Mayor, in Lot B in the seniors development, there would be units in that one that are adaptable.
Yeah, Lot B, no, but Lot A.
Not in Lot A.
Okay.
Councilor Blackman-Wolf.
Would it be fair to say that over the last couple of years, in most of our significant size rezonings, that most applicants have come forward with a certain percentage of purpose-built rental in their projects? And I'm distinguishing between non-market subsidized rental, but I'm just saying purpose-built rental. So no control on price, but tenure.
That's correct. I think most larger rezonings have. However, in those cases, they haven't done the cash contribution or have done a limited cash contribution, whereas in this case, the proposal is to monetize the target fully. So our larger proposals would do either cash or would do the units, in which case we wouldn't get any cash. Some projects have provided a lesser percentage of units and cash, and in this case, a larger amount of cash is proposed.
Okay, but I just want to make that clear, though. No, I mean, my understanding of the previous projects that we've approved is that if they are purpose-built rentals, we don't give a credit for that entire value as a CAC. We may exempt those particular units from being charged a CAC, but it's kind of different than the actual. And I'm just saying that because, you know, in terms of the way that I've observed this is the one difference I've really noticed with this project, you know, putting aside the whole CAC contribution towards the seniors housing project. So just wanted everybody in the room to be able to reflect on that as we consider this.
Jonas, can you speak to that specifically? Because I know it's confusing for people that sort of purpose-built rental, affordable rental, subsidized rental, and what we consider as something that could be valued as a community amenity contribution, or what is simply an expectation of a development.
So that is correct. My apologies. Misunderstood the question. Yes, most new developments of larger size are required to also do purpose-built rental. That's just market rental, and the only restriction is on tenure.
Thank you. Does that clarify things?
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Councillor Race.
Thank you, but just on that point, our policy, if I'm not mistaken, calculates community amenity contributions not on rental, calculates them on fee simple or saleable lands. Is that correct?
That is correct. The policy is still in draft, and that is one piece that we've still been adjusting.
So if we applied our policy, our draft policy, and there were some rental units in there, would that then lower that $5 million? So it's going to the seniors?
I believe that's correct.
Council, any other questions?
Just to follow up on Councillor Race's comments, question. It is worth mentioning, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, the CAC process and the CAC negotiation is a completely discretionary thing, and we set out expectations, but there's nothing in law. It's not like a DCC, a development cost contribution, where there's a bylaw, the amounts are exactly specified and they have to be that amount, not a penny more, not a penny less, whereas a community amenity contribution, we set guidelines and expectations. However, there's nothing preventing an applicant from exceeding those expectations or, you know, making the project in that way. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's a negotiation.
Thank you.
And so just hypothetically, I'm trying to understand this. It's about 200 units, just less. If we said 10% of those units had to be rental, so 20 units-ish, we would simply subtract the $15 per square foot from the CAC calculation that's out there right now. So it might be $300,000 difference or something. I'm ballparking it.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any other further questions from council at this point? Don't see any. Would anyone else like to speak to the public hearing? I've got one over here, and then one here, and one here, and then another one there. Please state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization, or at least your neighborhood. Maureen first, then Janice, then Kevin, then Ihor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Maureen McCall, and I'm the Executive Director for Squamish Helping Hands Society. I come before you tonight to say that I'm in support of this project. I just want to say no deal is the perfect deal. It's a difficult a dance that we do as nonprofits to try and meet the needs of our constituents. We are working very hard together as nonprofits between Laura, the Senior Society, Squamish Sea to Sky Community Services, House on Women's Centers, and others to look at the now and the future. So that is in our purview, and we do whatever we can to ensure that we are looking forward and into the future. But we're all very much caught up in the now, because the now is what is in front of us. And there's been such a quick pace in our expansion as a community, and we have to respond quickly. And as we speak, the cost to build is going up as we speak every minute, and I know that because I'm in the middle also of putting a project together and making that happen and getting it shovels in the ground and finished for the people that we serve. People with barriers need our help as nonprofits, and we as nonprofits look to our partners. We have a really strong partner in BC Housing, and I want to make that a really important point. I don't think, well, we know that BC Housing doesn't throw in money where it's not going to work. So I trust their intuition and their expertise and their finesse here. They're doing this all the time, as Naomi mentioned. So, you know, I think a key piece here is the fact that there's this sense that we are giving up land that was set aside. I think we've made a deal. There's a deal that has, or we are trying to make a deal. This society is trying to make a deal wherein they meet the needs of their constituents and get the best deal possible for the community, for our future as well. The future is now, unfortunately, for us. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time and your ears. Thanks.
I think someone's already branded that, the future is now, but good one. Someone's already branded the future is now. So we have Janice and Kevin and then Ihor, and please put your hand up if you'd like to speak.
Janice Brown. I live in at 1941 Garibaldi Way in Garibaldi Highlands. I'm not in support of this project. The reason I'm not in support of it is because I don't believe the best deal has been made. I don't think there's been enough proposals put forward. I think that we do have a housing crisis. Part of that housing crisis is that we have a glut of housing on the market that has created an imbalance in the community, both for expansion of business and amenities for the community and all of those kinds of things. But I do know that back in the day, Pat Brennan, Mayor and Council, had put that property aside to enable seniors in Squamish to age in Squamish. I have a mother who is living in Shannon Falls in independent living. She's 91 years old. She's lived her entire life. Okay, and just I'll throw in the fact that my grandfather built the first fire hall here and was the first fire chief here. Okay, so I have a concern because there are people moving in. That building is completely full now. That's independent living. That is a level of care before you go to Hilltop. Okay, the manor, and you're still independent completely. Like, you don't need to have your meals cooked for you. Maybe you need a little bit of home support. But the next level for you is independent living. It's not straight to Hilltop. I don't see any independent living. And we're giving away land. I see no independent living here. Right now, there's only 20 subsidized units in Shannon Falls for independent living. That's it. 20. So it's you're either on your own, or you're moving out of town, or you're going to Hilltop. That's it. So I am concerned because that land was meant to be for people who actually lived, worked, paid their dues in Squamish. And what I'm seeing is people from Texas, people moving their relatives from Texas into Shannon Falls, into the private section. So we are like this place now that is not a sleepy little town anymore. Okay, we are coveted. People want to move here. We have the best of the best here in terms of views, recreation, all that kind of stuff. And we are attractive, and people know we're here. the cows left the, what do you call it? The horses left the barn. So what I see happening is I see that by the time I need a place, well, by the time I need independent living, there isn't going to be any, okay? And I've lived here my whole life. So I am very concerned that we consider the seniors of tomorrow, that land was meant to meet their needs. Please do not remove the LUC. Please encourage the Squamish Seniors Home Society to work with you or the next council to find a better solution. We do not need Polygon to build those extra units on the site of the Cedars and Manor. We are not building today to meet the needs of our community, but instead meeting the desires of the developers and the bank. So to me, we have land. Land is gold, okay? Have we all forgotten that? Okay, we can't get it back. We don't have a lot of land downtown. We have a shortage of land now. What do seniors need? They need to be close to, be able to take their walker like my little old mom does and go over to Shoppers from the Shannon Falls because it's a short distance. So where else are we going to build that's going to be convenient for them in the future? Where are we going to put another independent living facility when we only have 20 subsidized units through Coastal Health here now? So I don't think that this proposal takes into consideration all the levels of care that seniors need in the aging process, and the fact that we have had to witness for a number of years now, husbands and wives being separated, one being sent down to Vancouver, the other one's still here. So they haven't been able to be together. There isn't enough thought that has gone into this. There aren't enough, and you know what? Polygon's not the only game in town. We don't have to give our land away. We are a coveted place to be. We love it here. So does everybody else who's come here and would like to come here. So basically, that's how I feel about it. I have to agree with Corinne and her letter, which I did read. Many of those, so we shouldn't be giving land meant for local residents away, as that land will be needed in the future. And certainly anything commercial should be, it should all be seniors. It should all be subsidized. It should all be considered for seniors, that gifted seniors in perpetuity piece of land. And any commercial that goes in there should cater to seniors, okay? Help aids, hearing aids, massage, podiatrists, whatever, okay? Not bikes and daycare facilities. We've already raised our kids, okay? So that's how I am about it.
No, please don't clap. Please don't clap. I have Kevin, and then Ihor, and then Tony, and please put your hand up if you would like to speak further at this public hearing.
My name is Kevin Shoemaker. I'm with Polygon Homes. We're the applicant for this project with the Senior Society. I just wanted to make Kevin Shoemaker, Polygon Homes. We're the applicants with the Senior Society. I just wanted to make a few clarifications. Earlier on, someone mentioned that there wouldn't be competitive bid for the build of the project. All of our trades will be competitively tendered. A number of the trades that are building what we're building in town now are local trades. There's a few from out of town just due to the unavailability of some of the trades, but everything will be competitively tendered. All of the suites in this building, the proposed rezoning, are going to be adaptable. Not if their whole project's adaptable. This one's a little tougher to answer. With respect to the comments about purpose-built rental and whether that can be incorporated, the other key component of this partnership that hasn't been discussed, or the other key component of the economics, is the land price. So we haven't talked about that, but we're buying the land from the seniors. The land price is reflective of what can be built on this site. So for it's a bit of a shell game, because every time there's $1 put into CACs or reduced density or rental that reduces the value of this site, that's dollars that are taken away from the seniors. So any of these things can be done, but it's just simply moving the money away from the seniors into the other project. It just works that way. It's not, and like Naomi, spoke about earlier, they've gone into the performa in depth. They are a third party that's investing $9.5 million into the project, so, and a lot of experience. So they have a clear understanding of, how those economics work. Thank you.
Thank you. Igor Zuzniak and then Tony Biggintown. Sorry, Councillor Pryor has a question for Janice.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to clear up Janice's comments. Are you around, Janice? Where'd you go?
You're going to clear up my comments?
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to make it clear that we're not giving any land away. No land is being given away.
Because if you were thinking about it, I would ask you to wait for the next council.
No,
I'd love
it's
to
not our
comment on
land.
that.
It's the society's land, and the society, currently their strategy is to sell it to Polygon and take that amount of money and put it into the new project.
But it was originally
If you-
provided by the dogs.
We understand that. I just wanted to clarify that it actually is being purchased.
Well, Mayor and Councils, my name's Ihor Zalubniak. I live in the Highlands. Members of the public and those who are running for election who showed up tonight. My wife has suggested I read my comments as I have a tendency to ramble when I'm just speaking off the cuff. Patty, don't laugh at me. I imagine we all do on occasion, as we all rarely disagree with ourselves, right? The need for housing that accommodates those aging in our community is without question. There's a lack of housing that addresses the financial challenges of many members of that group. We've got a convergence of land, money, expertise, and a willingness to address these issues, and it's upon us now. Because of the efforts of those with the varied interests in this issue, we have an opportunity to create the political will to ensure the creation and contribution to a partial resolution of this challenge into the future. There are, as there always are, varied and occasionally angry and distrustful sentiments in our community. One of the often cited points of contentions is the overall benefit to the developer who is willing to engage in this process. Often when I look around the room in any of these development projects, I don't see a lot of other companies coming to our aid. Polygon has done that, and I think they'll be commended for that. Sure, it's to benefit them, but they're not in this business just to be charitable. They're in it to make money as well. We're fortunate to have a company that values the benefit to our community as much as it values the prospects of future benefits to them from the deal. The current site of the Squamish Manor has served our community well for many years. And as the need has increased, other sites have evolved and now supply homes for seniors. And this project is simply another contribution to that process. This is an issue of our collective humanity, which can only be promoted and enhanced through this zoning change. Now, I'm not sure where I heard this, but let's say the land for the future. Well, when's the future? How do you measure when the future is? Is it today? Is it tomorrow? Is it 100 years from now? When's the future? I've heard it said maybe there's not enough coming to this community from the developer. Well, how do you measure enough? Keep squeezing it until there's nothing left? I don't know. How do you measure enough? And when is the right time? Well, what's the right moment? How do you ever know whether you're doing the right thing at the right time? You take a stab at it, you do your best, and you hope that what you're trying to do works. Somebody said that land is golden. You're right. I'm a realtor, and I know that the one thing they're not making more of is land.
Right.
But the other hand is when you have the land, you use it. You get the best deal. Well, I'm not going to argue about what the best deal is. My dad always used to say, make hay when the sun shines, or at least not until the strawberries start to ripen, because then it's going to rain for sure. I often say, if not this, then what? If not now, then when? And if not us, then whom? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Tony Bigham. Please don't clap. Tony Biggenpound, and then Herbert Vesley, and please put your hand up if you'd like to speak. Please state your name and address, and if you represent yourself, business, or organization.
My name is Tony Biggenpound, and I live upstairs. All of this discussion, there's been one little item which seems to have been overlooked. Pat Brennan, in his wisdom, set aside a certain amount of acreage for use by seniors. That is steadily shrinking. I don't have a particular problem with this particular project. It's just that in that bylaw, which is going to remove the seniors designation on Lot A, also needs to be an equivalent amount of land set aside somewhere else for seniors. Because in another 10 years, more than half the population of Canada will be retired over the age of 65. We're all going to need somewhere to live, with assistance perhaps. By reducing the amount of land set aside for seniors, you're not going to have the ability down the road to provide the necessary housing, whether it's independent, assisted, full care, doesn't matter. They're all seniors, and they need somewhere to live. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vesley, and then Sasha.
Thank you. I've been not hearing enough about the competitive process. I thought in our society we compete for projects, for contracts, as I do every day, dealing with an arm of a government, not BC Housing, but with BC Hydro. Any transformer that they buy is competitively bid. Of course, the suppliers will call for bids on the steel, on the copper, on everything. But it doesn't mean that I, the supplier, don't have to bid competitively against other suppliers, okay? So that's a basic principle that is being violated here, and I was surprised to hear a member of our government organization, BC Housing, to state that this is the best deal, do it with Polygon, they came to us, they do an excellent job for you. I don't understand that. The proposal I put forward in a spreadsheet to you, councillors, mentions 150 units is a possibility, plus what's left in the manor building makes 200 units. And you keep the land. Yeah. Why don't you look at that? Nobody talks about it. Have a look at my spreadsheet and tell me why you shouldn't be hitting the pause button and saying, please give us a reason why you can't do it this way. Because what I've heard so far from the society, the figures don't add up. They said, oh, if we do what you're asking, the rent will be $60. That's simply not true. That is simply not true, because the mortgage payment is what determines the rent in our different proposals. And the mortgage payment in my case is only slightly higher than the mortgage payment in their case. And I rest my case with that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sasha Fabry, and please put your hand up if you'd like to speak.
Hello again, folks. Sasha Fabry, 41604 Grant Road. My previous comments were on behalf of Corinne Lonsdale. These ones are my own. Just starting off, I'd like to congratulate Council on having one of the last public hearings and say that I don't envy your position right now on this project. This is a highly contentious one. I think personally that we are all a little bit in violent agreement. We all know that there is a housing crisis, and we all want the best for the seniors. We all want to make sure that, for you folks especially, we all want to make sure that there is adequate, affordable housing for everyone. We have a solution in front of us now, potentially not the solution. And a question that I haven't heard answered yet, that I'm hoping can be answered, is if this project is to go forward, how long will this meet the community's needs before the next council or the council after that will have to look again at increasing the seniors' housing? How long will this building meet our needs before we need to start looking again if we are to lose these lands? And to echo the comments before as well, I think, are there other lands that can be allocated by the loss of the half here? Thank you.
Thank you. I have Rob Forsyth, and please put your hand up if you'd like to speak at the public hearing.
Hello, my name is Robert Forsyth. I live in Brackendale, in Squamish. I believe the building that we're talking about, it's been in Squamish, kind of a derelict of a building for a long time. I did bury my grandmother there several years back, and she spent many years in that older building, and it was pretty bad shape back then. We have a huge issue. The growth is happening in Squamish. Everybody understands that, you know, you can't be NIMBY about it because it's the democracy of living in such a beautiful place and finding out about it, that you actually have the opportunity to reside there. Personally, I think it's really a huge issue is where we're going to be in the long term when we're older, when we're not able to take care of ourselves. All the services, the nursing services, and I'm thinking about this because my grandfather just died of 90 just over a month ago, and he was living in a very well developed, I think it was an 8-story building actually in Manitoba, and they sold their older home that they weren't able to maintain, and they're moving into a well-developed new development where there's adequate care, all sorts of different levels of care. This particular project, I mean, it's good for Squamish. You've got a really good developer that has a track record, that's willing to put in a substantial amount of money, equity. The District of Squamish, we've spent, I mean, this council's been in for 4 years. I believe the majority of the focus of this council has been to provide housing for the expansion and the growth that the provincial government anticipated that we were going to have. And I'm actually surprised that we don't have more projects of this nature now, and that is because of affordability. Now, there's a whole bunch of variables, grants and fundraising and all these different aspects, but regardless, every project in Squamish has always been started by amazing people that have a heart. It's always been backed by council who supports the voice of those people that have a heart. And from what I understand, we have a lot of people that have put a lot of effort, the last of our societies, the last of our functioning people that are actually doing volunteerism in our community. And you're gonna say to them, you're proposing saying to them, what you did is not good enough. You should go out for more. I mean, I believe that the people that have put together these proposals have put their homework in. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the housing authority, they wouldn't have a large developer, they wouldn't have all the things that they need to actually make that project go through. I mean, I don't think that I'm sure that we could ask Polygon, but have they not completed a project that they've started? Is there ever a project that wasn't completed? We have track records of developers that rip people off, that have poor practices, environmental disasters. We have all sorts of problems that have occurred in the past. And it's not people that have caused those problems, it's the policies that were established from the past, mostly based off of greed and the prosperity of a few. We are fortunate now. We have technology. We don't have archaic ideas. We don't have archaic, you're not able to do things the same way. We've got environmental protection agencies, we've got housing authorities, we've got all these different places in place. And this proposal has taken the resources from all the different possible things that I could possibly think of. And from what I've understand, they're all in support of it. So in my eyes, it's a development that, you know, I personally think it should be perhaps thought in respects to the height. I think maybe it should be considered 8 stories. Maybe it's something that needs to be done in order to bring down the costs or increase the amount of population. But what I haven't seen is what statistics, how many people are visiting our community right now, and how many people, other than the census report, are going to be here in the future. And there's not a whole lot of projects that are allocating a phenomenal amount of resources towards the seniors, from my understanding. And this is probably one of them. And it's, I don't know, I mean, I'm not the one to say whether it's the one-time shot, but it seems like it would be. It has the potential, anyway. But the last note is I would prefer that this council deal with it The new council has a lot on their plate. I think that staff would probably appreciate that you guys take all the 2 or 3 years of energy that you guys have put into this project, because I'm sure you're all well aware of all the different details of it, and I would prefer that you guys vote for it. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I just want to clarify one thing. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Polygon isn't actually putting any equity into the project. They're buying the land, and they're asking the Housing Society is asking that the CACs be allocated to their housing project. But those CACs would be applied either way, and the sale of the land is sale land. So I just want to clarify, for as far as I understand, Polygon is not putting any equity into this project.
They're not putting their own equity into it?
As far as I know, they're not, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
So they're not gonna pay the builders? They're not gonna pay the people that are contracted to them?
They're not putting any of their money.
That's a lot of equity to have those resources, to be able to call the trades to do the work.
Yeah, they're not putting any money into this project. I just want to clarify.
But they do have a pretty big part. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, please go ahead, come up. Yeah, so you have to come to the microphone. Thank you.
Okay, when I lived in
Can
the...
you just restate your name, please?
My name is Moira Croy. When I lived in the Cedars, I was 70 years old, right? I don't know what the law is per se, but when did 55 become a senior, for God's sake? Right?
I agree, because I'm not too far off now.
Right? When did that become a senior? I mean, I had a hard time. And at 70, I went out and got myself a job as a jail guard at the local police. Right? So what I'm saying, and I know that there are people with health issues, et cetera, that can't do that type of thing. Right? And at 75, I don't think I could do that now. But what I'm saying is, we keep talking about seniors. But hell, man, 55 is not a senior. You're in your prime of your life, really. So I'm going, and I'm going like, I don't want people even now to look at me and say, oh, that poor senior lady, So I would want to know why we can't, and I'm not saying the people that are 55 or under 65, when you start getting your pension, you get your pension at 65, right? I'm not saying that the people that are 50 or under 65 should be put out of this whole thing. They've been living wherever, right? But let's think about like phasing it out so that seniors really get the benefit of the seniors.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this public hearing? I have a few questions I'd like clarified, and it could be that Laura is the person to clarify it. With regard to the waiting list, there's been some questions about who's sort of eligible. Is it locals? Is it people who've lived here a certain amount of time? Or is it anyone who wants to put their list? How does the society determine priority for who lives there?
Okay.
Or if they can?
Well, we actually use the same kind of guidelines as BC Housing. So you have to qualify by being either a BC resident for more than a year. You have to be a Canadian citizen, and you can tick off one of the boxes. So it is not for someone to come from Texas and get one of our units. You have to be a BC resident. I do place priority on Squamish residents in particular because people living in Squamish with their families, having to move out of the community is terrible. So we do place priority for Squamish-born people, and we get people from all up and down the corridor. But definitely the priority is for BC residents and Squamish citizens.
Thanks. And one other question for you, and then I'll go to Councillor Elliott. There was a question about how long will these 232 units meet the needs into the future?
Well, again, I wish I had the crystal ball, but I will say this. At least I know for a fact that we will clear off our existing wait list. And like right now, where we're sitting, people on our wait list will wait 7, 8 years. Some people just say, I won't be alive by then. So it's really quite sad. So if we clear off our existing wait list, then people applying will get on the wait list, and I'm anticipating they'll get in quicker, within 6 months, a year. It depends on turnover. People move on to different places, Hilltop, wherever, next door to Shannon Falls. But that's how it works, and I'm not, I can't have a crystal ball and say what the demand's going to be 5, 10 years from now, but I know that it will continue to provide at least 15 units in turnover every year for people coming on the wait list.
And sorry, one more question while you're still up there. The assisted living piece, I know that, I don't believe that's part of your society's mandate, but could you speak to that just quickly if you could?
Okay, our society is for 55 and older. We call them junior seniors, okay? It's been like that ever since we incorporated in 1970. That has been in our mission statement since the very beginning. Sorry, Moira. So beyond, oh, sorry, what was the second question? The wait list? No.
Assisted living.
Assisted living, okay,
Thank
so
you.
all of our units are independent living. So one of the criteria to get into our complex is that you are able to live independently. Once you are in, we want you to age in place. I've had people live 35 years in the Cedars, and by the end, she was getting home support 5, 6 times a day, and it was working, so she stayed there before she moved on to Hilltop. But when we bring people in at the beginning, they have to be independent, 100%. So we will be providing 232 units for independent living for seniors.
Thank you very much. Councillor Elliott.
I have a couple of questions, Laura. One, some of the letters for this public hearing suggested there was not an independent assessment of the land value for the corner lot.
There was a third-party appraisal done. I can't remember the name of the appraisal company. It had 4 names in a row. But yes, there was a third-party appraisal done.
Okay. And then to Mr. Vesely's comments about alternatives and a spreadsheet, I believe that you've seen that.
Yes.
Can you comment on the viability of that, just so that council has an understanding?
Yeah, so I looked at a few things because he made some assumptions. Basically, our $1 million contribution that he was assuming we would be able to do if we had the manor and we had to maintain that, we would have to keep that money aside. So we had to take that money out of the equation. So we look at basically a mortgage at 3%, 35-year with a 10-year term, and look at what your debt service is for that, as well as you look at $4,000 per unit a year, which is basically for operating costs, which is a commonly used stat, and then divide that by 12 and figure out what your monthly cost of operating is, and it came to, I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was $185,000, so divided by the units, and we came to $965 a month just to meet our debt service and our operating needs.
Which is how much higher?
Well, we're looking at, for our safer level rents, about $765, so it would be a couple $100 more per unit that they'd have to pay that would not be covered by safer.
And finally, can you comment on, the ongoing operations and maintenance model for the new building based on, so how do you maintain it for the long term so that it does last? How is that?
It's going to be a big learning curve for me. But, obviously we're going to be using the BC Housing principles and guidelines, and there's a whole whack of education that needs to be done. We have been maintaining our buildings well over the past 50 years, even though people do say that the Cedars, it had a design flaw, and we just tried to work with it the best we could. But we will definitely be putting in new systems, and we will be using the maintenance modules that BC Housing provides. We'll have a full-time maintenance manager. We don't have that right now. It's not in our operating budget, but we do really well with the 3 guys that we have working. They're incredible. But yes, it's going to be a huge learning curve, but we're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Is that it, Councillor Elliott?
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Laura. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at this public hearing? I'm going to ask for a second time. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? And I'm going to ask for a third time. Peter, go ahead, and then Ihor. Just a reminder, I'm going to ask you not to repeat yourselves. I would like you to speak to new points or new issues. We still have another public hearing to go and another development variance permit, but you haven't spoken, Peter. Please go ahead.
I will be brief. Peter Gordon, 1211, whatever it is here in this building here. Thank you. I'm speaking as a member of the board of the Squamish Senior Citizens Housing. And I've heard the discussion this evening. And I think I speak for the board in saying that there are no bad and good arguments. There are no right and wrong arguments. Everybody's argument is valid. And I think if we all had as much money as we needed, we wouldn't be having the kind of discussion that we're having tonight. But this board chose this model to go forward with this program because of the overwhelming need for housing for our seniors. It is a crisis, and we had to look at the options and go with a program. And this is the one that we landed with for better or for worse. And I would ask council to support it strongly. We are not giving land away, and maybe people are not implying that. We are selling land at market value as determined by an independent appraiser. And we need the cash that comes with that to provide a large building of housing for seniors who need it today. So I believe that we have tried very, very hard to look at the various options. It is entirely, this is a rezoning application on behalf of a private company, so we don't have a part to play in the negotiations between the company and the municipality. But I do say that the net amount of revenue that we get from the sale of the property has a direct relationship to what deductions the municipality might wish to take in respect to the rezoning of that property. And given that we have a very, very tight budget, as other nonprofits have described here tonight as well, we just ask that for your consideration to take that seriously into account in your deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ihor?
Thank you. One of the things that I don't quite understand here, and usually my math is pretty good, is we've got a piece of land with some buildings on it currently occupied. We have a vacant piece of land that it's proposed a building will be put on. Now, if we keep the land with the houses and simply build our own building on the other property without selling the original parcel, where does the money come from to build that building? I've heard $40 million to build a building there. And that, as far as I understood, now please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is probably a question for the society, that Polygon stepped up and said, we'll build a building, you sell us the land, and we'll make our profit off the new building that we put on the land that you sell us. Is that the equation? Can anybody clarify that? Because there's a whole bunch of money that nobody's talking about that's got to come from somewhere to do this. And at this point, it's like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. But I'd like to know now, how does the equation work? Can anybody speak to that clearly?
Laura, do you want to answer that question? I mean, my understanding, the report says, I believe the building is going to be $57 million, 52?
So this is the new building, would be $52 million.
52 million.
All right.
They're getting equity from the sale of the land.
So they're going to get 10 mil from the sale of the land, 9 from the ministry.
And then the rest is mortgaged, and they're expecting a $3.65 million community amenity contribution from the district.
Okay. And Polygon is going to manage the project?
Polygon is going to be the contractor on the project.
All right. Will there be a profit in that portion of the deal for Polygon?
That's a question Polygon
Okay.
would have to answer, and I'm sure there's a management fee of some kind,
Management
but
fee,
that's.
and then they'll make money off the other parcel as well. Is that kind of how it works?
I suspect that's their anticipation.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm just trying to figure this equation out, because
Yeah.
right now there's a hole in it, and I don't know where that number is.
Yeah.
Kevin?
Kevin, would you like to, thank you for chairing the meeting, Ehor. Kevin, would you like to speak to that issue?
Thanks, Eeyore. So basically the way it works is, sorry, I'm going to go back to first principles. The way it works is that we build the new building while the existing buildings are in place and the residents remain in their homes. And the way that building's getting built, the sources of the funds are the CACs that we would normally pay to the district will flow through directly to the seniors. That's one pot of money. There's the money we're paying for the land. There's the, excuse me. What's that? Yeah, sorry. There's the $9.5 million that's coming from BC Housing. And then in addition to those pots, which create the equity, that allows enough equity for BC Housing to step up and help with the financing of both the construction of the building and the long-term financing for the seniors. So they get a favorable rate on the long-term financing. And then Laura has spent a ton of time for a couple of years now that we've been working on this, working the budgets, looking at the numbers, and making sure that the debt service is allowing us, or allowing the society, to yield the appropriate ratio of safer units. But that's basically how it works. And like I suggested earlier, there may be 1,000 different ways that this can be done. This is what has evolved over a long discussion, and we believe is probably the best deal that's in front of us today.
Madam Mayor, he said that the CAC...
You can't speak from there, Herbert. Please, you can come up in a moment, but please, you can't speak from there. Are you finished, Kevin?
Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? Herbert, this is when you put your hand up. Actually, I'll go to the person at the back. They haven't spoken yet. Herbert, I'm going to go to the woman at the back. They haven't spoken yet, and they'll come back to you. Hi, please state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or organization.
So my name's Lisa Friesen. I live on Skyline Drive. I am the general manager of Shannon Falls Retirement Residence, which is right smack sandwich in between the buildings that we're talking about here. And I was a bit torn about coming up. I'm not representing the 80 residents that do live there now. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and just the observations that I have made. We have 75 suites. They're independent living, 20 of which are subsidized through BC Housing and Vancouver Coastal Health. And we're 9 years old. Those 20 subsidized suites have been full with a wait list since the moment we opened. And it took us almost 7 years to fill the other remaining 55 suites. Those are private pay, and it's obvious that the money wasn't there for a lot of residents or seniors to be able to afford that. At this point in time, we are full. We have a wait list of 25 people who do have the funds to pay for that. But we still have the 20 that are full and people waiting over a year to be able to get into those subsidized suites. Those are not just subsidized based on financial need, but for people who require care. And if we have more housing, like they show in the B section there, which I obviously support, I'd like to see residents have more better housing and have an opportunity to have it at a reduced cost. But they could also get the help that they need in there through Coastal Health, which I know is also going to be a pressure on them. But we will be able to service those people that do have some care needs, but can't afford to pay privately for Shannon Falls. I am concerned that there hasn't been a whole lot of discussion on what's going on the A zoning. I have some very scared residents of being blocked in by 2 large buildings. It's not just the views, it's the light, it's the traffic, it's the population increase of the visitors, it's the safety concerns they have about what's going to go in there. I do have residents that have trouble just getting across the street to save on foods. So if we're looking at commercial buildings underneath, I would hope to see things that are amenable to seniors, easy to get to. It's a close location. It's horrible crosswalks there, so I hope that some of this money will go into some safe transport across the way, and maybe increasing the bus route along there for them. But like I say, I can't speak for the 80 residents that are there, but I do hear some of their concerns. I'd like to see the housing personally happen, but I'm very, very, very concerned about what we will see without the direct. I don't have a lot of direction or information on this A development, so I hope that will be given some consideration. Thank you.
That is technically the topic of this public hearing.
There hasn't been a lot said, so I
Yeah.
was waiting to hear some more before I
Thank
spoke,
you.
but thank you.
Mr. Vesely,
Thank you. Do I get the last word now? Is that?
you will
authorized?
never get the last word.
Two questions came to mind when I listened to these gentlemen from the opposition benches. One, CAC, when does that money flow to the district? Does it flow during the construction phase of a seniors housing project? Or does it flow when they start their project on lot number A?
Jonas, why don't you put all your questions up there, and then we'll, unless,
And the second question was, when Bill Burke and I met with Peter Gordon only last week, he said the construction cost by Polygon was, and I've written that down, 46 million. Today we hear 52 million. Tomorrow, what will it be? Have we had any fixed prices? Those are the two questions.
thank you. Mr. Valeniskis, at what point would the CAC, or has the CAC been proposed to flow through?
So in this case, it would be secured at the adoption. So the CAC would likely come in at the same time as adoption happens, and that would be regulated in the land development agreement.
And I'm not sure, but maybe Laura or someone, can we just confirm what the current estimated cost of the building is?
This is kind of the problem when this whole process keeps getting drawn out longer and longer, is that the numbers actually keep going up. So I think initially when we started talking a few years back, it was about 42 or 43, and then it's because of interest rates and the cost of building in Squamish is apparently a lot more expensive than the Lower Mainland for whatever reason. So I think we're up to about 49 million right now, but that's all I can say.
And there are no guarantees with construction costs, it's the challenge. I'm gonna ask for a first time, Councillor Elliott, you have a question.
So I'm glad that the general manager of Shannon Falls spoke. So are there frontage improvements with this rezoning? And because I'm thinking about how long that block is, and lit crosswalks or signalized crosswalks, mid-block crosswalks, it's a really wide street.
Through you, Mayor Heinzman, all frontage improvements would be secured at development permit stage, so it would include frontage improvements and crosswalks and whatever was deemed necessary by the engineering department at the time as surfacing agreement. So unfortunately, it wouldn't happen at the end of the rezoning, but further down the line at development permit.
When the development happens on Lot A.
Thank you.
So just to clarify, no frontage improvements except in front of Lot B's building would happen. The Lot A building frontage would happen when Lot A is being developed. The Lot B building would happen when Lot B is being developed.
That's correct.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Elliott? I'm going to ask for first time, is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? I'll ask for a second time, is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? I'm only asked 3 times. I'm asking for a third time, is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? There being no further speakers, I will declare the public hearing closed. And just remind everyone that council is not permitted to receive further submissions or hear either a proponent or an opponent of the application once the public hearing has been concluded. And any and all communication should go through staff at this point. And thank you very much. This is a very complicated issue. I much appreciate people's contributions and thoughtfulness. And I think, as someone said, we all know there's a housing crisis. We all know affordability is an issue, and we all know seniors housing is necessary. that is something we all foundationally believe in. Thank you very much. We're going to take a short recess, but before we do, I just want to get a general show of hands. Who's here for the next public hearing, and who's here for the next public hearing? No, not the development variance permit, but not the development variance permit, but the public hearing. Who's here for the development variance permit? Okay, I think there's way more people for the development variance permit. We're going to do the development variance permit first, and we'll go back to the second public hearing after. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Thank you very much, everyone. Council will vote on this next week. We're going to shuffle the agenda slightly. We're moving on to 4.1, development variance permit number 139, unit 130, 1200 Hunter Place.
Thank you, Mayor.
Wait, no. I got one more thing to say. I was speaking with my mouth full of food. My apologies. This is a development variance permit. As with any variances, there is an opportunity for the public to speak to the variances. So anyone who would like to speak to the variances, once the staff report has been presented and council questions have been clarified, we'll go to the public to see if there's anyone who would like to speak to the DVP. Mr. Polinis.
Oh, Mayor Heisman?
Yep.
I have to declare conflict on this issue because the person with the variance is a tenant of mine, and if the variance goes through, it charge.
Not sure they can put this into words in the public record. Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Pryor, you can't sort of even be lingering in the public space, so you can go to the bathroom. Stage lock yourself.
Everyone's tired, sure.
Only one flush. I couldn't help myself, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Jonas Volniškis, Director of Community Planning, and today I am presenting Development Variance Permit number 139, which requests a reduction to the minimum distance between a site containing a school and a cannabis retail business from 300 meters to 35 meters, that's property line to property line, and requests cannabis retail to be permitted on a parcel with a frontage on Cleveland Avenue. So both of those are requirements in the zoning bylaw, and the request is to waive the requirement for frontage on Cleveland and to reduce the distancing requirement. The subject property is located at Unit 130 at 1200 Hunter Place within Squamish Station Mall. The mall property is outlined in yellow on the map with the arrows pointing to the specific unit. The subject property is Zone C4, which is our downtown commercial zone. The OCP land use designation is Downtown Gateway. The development variance permit proposes to vary Section 437, which is the distancing requirements from 300 meters to 35, and Section 437D, which is to allow cannabis retail to be permitted on parcel with frontage on Cleveland. The Squamish Station Mall property is located 35 meters from Capilano University property, essentially across Cleveland Avenue. The district measures the 300-meter buffer distance from property line to property line. That's how the zoning bylaw is written, which is basically the width of Cleveland Avenue shown here with the red arrow. Unit 130 within the mall is located approximately 170 meters from Squamish Elementary School, 360 meters from École Les Anglos, pardon my French, and
That was French.
and 390 meters from Howie Sound Secondary School, all as the crow flies, or building to building, as shown here in the black arrows. From a business servicing perspective, the location within the mall is suitable for general commercial retail use, which is what is proposed here, as there is a large amount of parking and convenient vehicle and public transit access to the property. It's a high-traffic commercial area. The intent of the 300-meter buffer put in place in June of 2016 is to mitigate concerns around youth access or exposure. The bylaw was based on the approach other local governments were taking at the time, So Vancouver has a 300 meter, and Seattle and Denver. Victoria has a 200 meter buffer, and Amsterdam, for comparison, is 250 meters. It also aligns with a lot of the school districts have policy around land use, around the area of land use interest for schools, and that is generally around 300 meters around the school. A previous variance was approved in September of 2016, so not long after we've adopted these regulations to regulate where dispensaries locate. There was a variance that was approved to reduce the school buffer from 300 meters to 240 meters. As the crow flies, the distance from school building to cannabis retail building is 360 meters, and it's also separated by Highway 99, so that's the dispensary on Tantalus Road. The dispensary, the staff recommendation was to support the request given the building-to-building distance and the fact that there was a highway in between. So in terms of this application, referral responses have been received from Capilano University, École Les Angles, the Medical Health Officer for Vancouver Coastal Health, Sea to Sky Region, and School District 48. All referral responses were not in support of the proposed reduction of the buffer. They voiced concerns around the potential negative effect on students, employees, and visitors to the school side, given the close proximity of the cannabis retail business. The mall site previously contained a liquor store. A liquor store use is not a permitted use anymore in our zoning bylaw. Any proposed stores must go through a site-specific rezoning process, although we should note that there is a liquor store within 300 meters that is existing there today. All existing liquor stores in Squamish are legally non-conforming because of the change in the zoning that happened. So any liquor store has to go through a zoning process, or any new liquor store. The tobacco stores, which include vaping, are regulated in a very similar way to cannabis, which is also a new regulation, with buffering requirements, which include not being sold within 300 meters of a site containing a school. If a tobacco retail business was established prior to May of 2017, when the regulations came in, it is permitted. So this includes the Van Mist vape shop, which is less than 60 meters from Howe Sound Secondary, which the school district at the time also objected to the business license, just for context. So the legislative and district process for engagement were followed for this application. Development sign was installed on the property. The project was posted on the showcase. Variance notification was delivered to adjacent properties within 100 meters of the subject property. To date, we've received approximately 40 comments. 35 were in support, and 5 were not in support. I just want to make a correction in the staff report. One of the policy sections talks about this proposal or request not being supported because of it being on the active routes to schools. And I just want to correct that. That is not a concern, and that's not the basis for our recommendation. That's an omission in the report. It's based on the fact that it's quite a significant request to reduce the distance. So the recommendation is not to authorize issuance of the development variance permit. Alternative motion is for council to approve the request. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, are there any questions for clarification purposes at this point? Was that a hand? I'm sorry, I trained my hand.
No, I'll wait till after.
You don't have a question? Question, Councillor Elliott?
I understand that under the new provincial regulations, everyone will require a provincial license to operate a cannabis retail outlet, and I'm wondering if the applicant is expected to have, or will have, or has applied for that license.
Yes, the expectation is if the variance is approved, one of the conditions of the variance permit would be for a provincial license before a business license is issued. So any new licenses now will require a provincial license, and existing licensees are being notified that they will have so much time to apply and to show that they have applied, and then so much time to get a provincial license.
Do we have any idea what that timeline is at this point?
Yes, so we will, what we're working on is getting a confirmation from existing retailers that they've applied by the end of October to the province, so this just submit the application. And then we're going to, we haven't established how long it's gonna take to get a license from the province, because we're assuming the province is gonna get quite inundated with these requests, and from liquor licensing, we know that they can take a while. So we're going to work with the timelines of the province.
Thank you.
Councillor Race?
Thank you. Does the provincial policy have any guidance as far as location of dispensaries vis-a-vis these schools or any other uses?
No, the location has been left to municipalities or regional districts to determine.
Even permission period has been left to the local government.
That's correct.
Any other questions for clarification purposes from council? I don't see anyone. As this is a development variance permit, is there anyone who would like to speak to the DVP? Please come up, state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Right. Hello, I'm Brian Reiser, representing, I guess, myself and the business, 99 North. Thank you.
And you're from Valleycliff.
I am from Valleycliff, the mighty BC. I'd like to, thank everybody for this historic time in our country. To answer your question, yes, actually, I've been told I'm one of 12 applicants in this province that have a completely completed application process in. The province returning my emails on a Saturday, I should say, which is a sign of the apocalypse and also a sign that they really want this to go forward. And the province has actually already been in contact with the District of Squamish, and the District of Squamish has already replied saying that this meeting is going on, and they will be telling them probably tomorrow with an email saying it's a go. But before we get there,
Don't get ahead of yourself.
so I'd like to say, so we started this journey 4 years ago. And I'd like to thank you all so much. You guys make votes all the time, and you don't always know the repercussions of your votes. And I can say with utmost certainty that you've made this world a better place by reducing the stigma of cannabis in this community and allowing the licensing. I have got hundreds of tear-soaked tears, hugs of appreciation. We've changed lives. Suffering has lessened in our community.
Mr. Reiser, can we speak to the variance?
Yes, okay, so this is an easy one for you guys, because on one side we have empirical evidence and facts and examples of it being absolutely zero problem whatsoever, buffers with schools. In the agenda, there was also letters that had all the evidence in there. And on the other side, all you really have is stigma against the plant, which, when our country was about to legalize gay marriage, there were communities trying to figure out how to stop that too, because gay marriage was going to be normalized and people were scared. And you have facts and you have empirical evidence, and yet, for example, we have empirical evidence that it does not cause any harm whatsoever, and we're now here discussing if a retail use should be put in a retail mall. That makes no sense. Of course it is. And it's not, the buffer was put in originally because they were legal stores. Makes sense, you want to hide that. But this will be a 100% legal retail business that should be put in a retail mall. All the points against it are there is no proof or facts or evidence saying that this is a bad thing. There is only, unfortunately, decades of stigma. And it's going to be hard to get through there, but we're doing it. And you guys have made the world a better place, and I thank you for that. Regardless of what happens tonight, no one can ever take that away from us. Thank you very much, and I look forward to making history tonight.
I think there's a question for you.
Any questions? Yeah, bring them on.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Mr. Reiser, this is a change for our community, and we do have our referring agencies that are not in support of this variance, and we have had a few letters, not very many, but a few, of people that don't support this variance. Can you maybe talk to what your storefront will look like?
Oh, yeah. and well, I put that in part of the application, it's all frosted windows. You will not be able to see inside the store from the store. If you do open the door, there is a blocked room in which you have to show ID to get any further into there. And the province is going so over the top in the protect the children thing, is that no minors can go in, and it will be a 14-year prison sentence if you are selling marijuana to minors. Yeah, right? Crazy. Whereas liquor, you get $500 fine. So, but you will not be able to see any product. So every product is going to be in a bag, completely opaque. No product will be able to be seen within the packaging, and no packaging is allowed to be seen from outside the building.
And can you speak to the signage that's allowed? So
yeah, certainly. Yeah, it's just going to be the logo, 99 North Cannabis Store. That's
no
it.
big red sign, get
Nope.
your dope here.
No. Yeah, that in a couple years, well, everything you see with liquor, it's going to eventually, but that'll take years.
I'm talking about the change, right? We're trying to plan a change for our community that's reasonable and helps people make this adjustment.
I will email you the logo. It's classy, 99 North in very nice, classy letters. And there's the province is very strict that you can't have anything remotely enticing whatsoever in any part of this application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the Development Variance Permit? Please come up, state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization. Sorry, Mr. Freitag, I do have you on the list, so you can go up next.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Bass. I live at 37759 2nd Avenue, right across from the current dispensary location. We've been there longer than Brian, and we've seen the whole process as it's happened. He has been a very respectful neighbor. There have been some problems, and every problem he has tried his very best to mitigate. Most of those problems have arisen because the area is not appropriate for retail. It's not zoned for retail. There's not enough parking. It's just not a great retail location. I support this change because I do think that it is a better retail location. I support it as a parent of a child at Squamish Elementary. I don't see it as an issue. Anyone else who has children at Squamish Elementary knows that the kids are not allowed to leave the school grounds during the day. The kids from the high school, well, we've all been high school students, and if they want something, they will travel longer than 300 meters to get it. So I don't really see this buffer as very effective in restricting and keeping it from being normalized. I think that ship has sailed. It is becoming legal, and I don't really think that it's the district's role to police this. There are going to be very strong laws, and my experience with Mr. Reiser as a business owner, I've seen that he's worked very hard to keep his neighbors happy and to be a respectful business owner. This 300-meter buffer in Squamish is extremely restrictive for business owners. And I don't believe it's really fair for a person who's trying to operate a legal business to have these restrictions. You, as counselors, are probably aware of the extremely small amount of retail locations that are greater than 300 meters from a school. We're really lucky that we have a lot of schools, but it does provide some restrictions. I'm all for this variance. I think this is a great location. There used to be a beer and wine store there. I don't think there was any problems with that. And I don't see that this product is going to be more accessible to children than alcohol. If anything, it's going to be less accessible because of the restrictions by the government, the BC government, who will be managing it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Freitag. next.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and staff for the report. My name is Mo Freitag. I reside at 642 Lower Crescent in Britannia Beach, and I happen to be the contractor who will be hopefully doing the tenant improvement for this location at Hunter Place. When I read your report, it made me pause for reflection. All respect to those who have raised concerns for the children and limiting their access to cannabis and cannabis products. I have 2 children of my own, one 11 and one 17. So I resided to ask my daughter, who's 17, about access to cannabis amongst her and her peers. When I reviewed your information, my 17-year-old daughter, and your recommendation of no development variance permit at this location, she said, "Dad, regardless of the rules put in place, teenagers, if willing, will always achieve the goal of access to alcohol, cannabis, tobacco, vape, or whatever they want. If the adults running the ID checks at these facilities are doing their job, the underage people won't get access. Having an arbitrary distance from schools will not help in the process of educating people about the pros and cons of cannabis use or their access to the product. I request the council please move this variance in support of a professional, well-operated, legal dispensary regulated by you, the District of Squamish, by the provincial government, by the federal government, and all the agencies that apply their policies and laws. Thank you very much."
Thank you. Yep, please come up and state your name and address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization.
Okay, great. Hi, my name's Kaz Holland. I live at 40147 Government Road, and I'm in full support of this development variance. I have a young son that goes to elementary in town, and he doesn't go to Squamish Elementary, but he could at some point, and he could go to Howe Sound Senior Secondary as well at some point. I don't know, but if he did, I would be fine with that. I think what happens is it comes down to 3 things with them having access to anything in this store. Is first of all, I own stores in the Lower Mainland and around BC. And the security, I know from my store and other stores, is absolutely top-notch, as good or better than any liquor store around. And it's because it's a big scare for anybody in that business or people working in that business that any kid ever gets in, or any student or anything ever gets in and is able to buy anything. First of all, most of the stores have locked doors, so that you have to pass a locked door. That's starting to change because it's becoming more mainstream, but that was the way for the whole beginning of this thing. And then, but as well is the staff, and every store that I've ever seen in the Lower Mainland anyway, staff is really on it on ID and that kind of thing, so it's very hard to get them in. So that's one, the security at stores is very good. Now 2 is, in this Hunter Place mall, I mean, it's like a fishbowl. So anybody that goes in there, when the kids, if kid did want to go in there and try to buy or anything like that, everybody in town's going to see them. So that's a big thing where there's no hiding. Over where 99 North was before, I think that's a lot of better of an area to maybe sneak in, sneak out, not be seen, that kind of thing. This is now like a fishbowl, so everybody would see the young person trying to get in there or whatever, and there would be that as well as the security. Then thirdly, I think a lot of this has to do with parenting and counseling and how that happens. And then if that's all done properly, then kids know about this and they know what it does and they know what's going on with it, and it's not such a big mystery thing that they're trying to get at, kind of thing, if you will. But anyways, for that, I'm in full support of this development variance, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this development variance permit? I'll ask for a second time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the DVP? Please come up and state your name and address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Jackie Menezes. I live at 38447 Buckley Avenue, right across from Howe Sound Secondary. I'm representing myself as someone knowledgeable in the ACMPR and in cannabis. I know that people who are under the care of a medical licensed practitioner can grow 4 of their own plants in their own home. So that means your children can be exposed when they go to visit a friend. Children can be exposed in your own home. So to bar it from being put into a retail operation that will be secured beyond belief, and Mr. Reiser would be subject to immense fines, which I don't think he's going to want to be, so he will adhere to all of that. I see no reason why to bar him from operating this, and he will then pay taxes on a building is currently empty. He will also provide jobs, which we very much need, as well as a more secure place than where it currently is for sale. You can't hide in that plaza. You will be seen, and there's lots of security. So I am in full support of this operation going into Hunter Place.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to this development variance permit? I'll ask for a second time. Everyone waits for the second time. Why not put your hand up on the first time? Yeah, please state your name and your address.
Karen Shard, 1336 Main Street, downtown Squamish. I just I don't want to repeat what Mo and what Jen said, but I full support what they were saying, and I just wanted to go on the record saying that I think that we should grant Mr. Reiser the variance proposal change, and just wanted to be put on the record for that. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
I'll ask for a first time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this development variance permit? Go, first time? Yeah. Yeah, go for it.
Hey folks, Sasha Fabry, 41604 Grant Road. Just a question. The difference between what's proposed distance-wise from the school to 300 meters, does it take like, what, 10, 15, 20 seconds on a bicycle, the difference? Just a curiosity. It seems like a very short distance to me that makes it not that big a difference all in all. 300 meters takes about 65 seconds on a bicycle all in all if it's right next to the thing. And there are clearly some very strict penalties and authorization and entry into this building. It seems reasonable to me.
Thank you. I'll ask for another time. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Danielle. Is that loud enough?
Yep.
My name is Danielle Reiser. I live in Valley Cliff. One of the reasons I think that this should be approved.
You're married to him.
Well, and no, he's married to me. So I have been in the healthcare system, and I work in addictions and mental health. So we have very many conversations on appropriate cannabis use, and long discussions, and the regulations really that are coming through are going to stop any of that, like marketing to kids, selling to kids, and really trying to prevent that more than any other substance that's been around. They're saying, no, you can't do this, you can't do this. So there's very clear guidelines to prevent any kind of like flashy signs like, kids, buy your cannabis here. So, you know, they've really thought about that, so I really don't think the location is an issue at all.
Thank you. I'll ask for first time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this development variance permit? I'll ask for second time. Is there anyone who'd like to speak to the DVP? And I'll ask for a third and final time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the DVP? I don't see any more speakers. Councillor, are there any more questions, or did anything come up that you'd like to clarify with staff at this point? Question?
Yeah, I'll ask a question. Where did the exact number of 300 meters come from? What's that based on as far as facts or figures?
So it did come from other jurisdictions that were grappling with the regulation back in 2015, 2016. And as I mentioned, it is aligned with the school district policy to have a land use interest within 300 meters of a school site. So I suspect that that's where the original 300 meters came from. But essentially, we were duplicating approaches taken by other jurisdictions.
When it was technically an illegal activity, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Any follow-up question?
Can I speak to that for?
Just want to get questions for
Yep.
clarification purposes out of the way?
Yep.
If you have a.
It's incorrect, but I'll wait until.
Oh, if you have a response
I do
to
have a
that, then
response.
go ahead, yeah.
So 300 meters was decided on because in the United States, the federal jurisdiction, pot is illegal federally, but in the separate states can basically be, it can be legal in the state, but illegal federally, but legal in the state. So in order to keep marijuana use outside of the federal jurisdiction, it had to be outside of 300 meters, because within 300 meters from any public system, like a school system or a community space, 300 meters is the federal regulation, so all cannabis use had to be outside of 300 meters. And somehow that, when, as a generalized policy, when we were grappling with numbers, that is the number that was decided on in some of the Canadian policies, but it actually has no basis in Canadian law or regulations.
No, but yeah, our decision was basically
Yes,
based on what
absolutely.
Vancouver did, where that came from.
On all
I
the
agree.
other policies.
Yeah. So I just want to remind council, just want to ask quickly, are there any more questions for clarification? Question for clarification, Councilor Race.
Could you go back to the slide of the overhead, please? That one. So the 35 meters we're talking about, I take it our bylaw talks about the very edge of the property line that's closest? It
That's
doesn't-
correct.
And that's the end of, if I'm not mistaken, the end of the Discovery Trail?
That's, yes,
More or less runs through that little neck of the woods there?
yeah,
A general public trail.
yes.
And the Capilano University
I got
dog
it.
legs there.
Yeah, no, I got that. Thank you.
Any more questions for clarification? I'd like to, if council, we always try to put forward a positive motion and vote it down if council's inclination is to vote something down, so I'll ask that someone doesn't move a not support motion. Councilor Blackman-Wolf,
I'd like to move the alternative to the staff recommendation.
which is to support the variance, correct?
Correct.
Seconded by Councilor Chappelle. Councilor Blackman-Wolf?
Yes, I think it's really heartening to see the speakers that we've had today. I think it actually says something pretty unique about our community in terms of where we're at on this whole cannabis journey discussion. And I think that council, in my humble opinion, has tried to keep up with that. And I think that, you know, having a community that is very knowledgeable about the issue and having a very nuanced understanding has given us that space to be progressive on this issue. So I'm supporting the variance because I think it's a good spot for this type of retail use. I also think the applicant has a very good history in our community and has demonstrated very responsible business practices. I'm also supporting it because I've actually never really supported the buffer zone idea. I think that, you know, our good urban planning, we want uses to be in close proximity to accessible areas. And the accessible areas are the areas where our public facilities are and our retail facilities are. So to me, as we grow and try not to sprawl out all over the place, having buffer zones for a particular retail use does not make sense to me. So that's why I'm supporting this variance. And I do hope that the next council re-examines this policy altogether and eliminates the buffer zones.
I'm just going to go down the table here. Councilor Race.
Thank you. Could you put that slide back up again, please? Just, thanks.
Nope.
Okay. So first of all, just to Mr. Reiser, thanking us for the policy that we passed some time ago. I want to remind him I was actually the one that voted against it, so I cannot take any credit for that. And I did so because it was illegal. And I said at the time that actually I had been sort of advocating for legalization of marijuana since back in the 60s, and I can recall a specific conversation I had with a friend of mine whose father was a Vancouver police officer about that very thing back in the late 60s. And it's always seemed to me a little bit strange that it was treated differently from tobacco and from alcohol. And I can't admit to using it ever, of course, as a politician. And if I did, I'm sure I didn't inhale. But
You went there.
nevertheless, I was a child of the 70s, yeah. So, but nevertheless, looking at this and this variance, because I've followed this issue over the last several years, and the legal part of it actually kind of bothered me, and I voted against that. There was zoning changes just on principle, because I thought it was wrong for a municipal government to zone something that was at the time illegal. Be like zoning a counterfeiting shop or something like that. It just didn't make any sense to me to do that, and so I voted against it. However, now it's going to be legal, and that does change it for me. And so now I look at this like I'm looking or trying to look at any other business. And so I look at this buffer system, and thank you to Councillor Chappelle. I wondered where it all came from, because it always seemed kind of arbitrary to me. And even if it was in effect, and we have varied it once before, I look at the map here, and it's 360 meters from the school, 35 meters from the edge of the property, but the edge of the property is really where the trail goes. It's not a school part of the land. And so looking at that particular school example, if that's all there was to it, I wouldn't have a hesitation with the variance. House on Secondary is also over 300 meters away, and so that to me is just not a problem. So the issue, I guess, for me, or for anybody, is whether or not the proximity of Squamish Elementary should make a difference or should be varied. And I'm trying to look at this like any other business. In that particular mall, there happens to be a hardware store that sells firearms. So obviously a dangerous subject. But we seem to be fine with that. It's close to a school. But it's sold responsibly by retailers that take care to sell it to appropriate people. And that's, I think, what we have here. And I think that's where we're going, and I'm happy to go there with that. I look at these response letters we got from the different institutions, and frankly, to me, that was an institutional response. There was no real evidence, there was no facts. There was the letter from Vancouver Coastal Health that I read from Dr. Lecision, comparing it to tobacco use, and proximity to schools can increase the use of tobacco, and there was a school, there was actually a little store a block away from the high school I went to, and I'm not sure if that's where I bought my first package of cigarettes or not, but nevertheless, that's not the case here. And that letter even refers to secondary students. It doesn't make point about the elementary school. I'm not that naive to think that elementary students can't get into trouble. However, I think the odds are certainly less that they would get into trouble. They are much more visible in a shopping mall and in a store because, of course, they are younger, and they could never pass for an adult or anything close to it. So all things considered, I don't see that as a problem, and so I can support this variance.
Thank you. Councillor Chappelle.
Thank you. I'm pretty proud of our community for leading on regulations in general and dispensaries. Our economy struggles. I believe one of the speakers brought up the fact that retail locations are difficult to find in this district, and I much prefer this location over the end of 2nd Avenue for a dispensary. Eyes on the street is really important for crime. Having adequate parking for that location is really important. The arbitrary buffer zones, I would agree with Councillor Backman-Wolf that having arbitrary buffer zones, it really has to be not unlike liquor stores, looked at a site-specific, in a site-specific way. But for me, the diversification of our economy is going to have to rely on something, and it can't be residential building forever. So we have to have a diversified economy, and when we look at the craft industries that are growing in this community based on recreation of all sorts, this new industry has already been thriving because of our forward-thinking regulations. And it's also high-income employment for our citizens. And with housing prices skyrocketing, these dispensaries also create employment in our community that wouldn't be here if we were really restrictive with regulations. So I look forward to Mr. Reiser opening up his location and being one of the provincial licensees. Congratulations on that. That's a tough road to hoe, and I'm hoping that this council can continue being forward-thinking and leading in policy and policy for economic development.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So I think part of our job as a council is to help our community deal with change. And I think we were wise to put in buffers early on so that we could provide a gradual introduction to our community about what legalized retail cannabis looks like. And so I think we always put those buffers in with the idea that they would evolve over time as we got closer to legalization and after legalization. So I think there are people out there that won't like this variance. And I think that you will be the one to set the gold standard about how this can be done well in a community and help our community learn about what legal cannabis retail looks like. And so I do expect that our buffers will evolve over time, but I am supportive of this variance permit.
Thanks. I'll speak very briefly to it. I too will support the variance. I think we had a good reason to put them in the beginning. And it was, as Councillor Elliott eloquently put, to help to our community gradually move into the era of legalization of cannabis. I suspect the new council will address this situation fairly early on in their new term, because I don't think you want to have 500 of these variances coming forward, and as they become normalized in the community, I think it's wise for council to consider changing that soon into the future. In fact, I think there's a couple aspects of the bylaw. Even the buffer itself, I'm challenged by how it's written, property line to property line, when you can have these massive properties. Capilano University property is a good example of the actual facility is well over the buffer limit, but the land is a very large piece of land. The mall is a very large mall, and we calculate it based on the closest possible points. We already have a liquor store within this buffer. We have a cigarette dispensary, I'm going to call it that. 7-Eleven is adjacent to this adjacent to a school property. I think we need to look at these similarly, and the licensing is going to be regulated through the province anyway. So I'm happy to support this variance. I too am proud of how progressive our community has been on this issue. I agree that some people are more challenged to sort of come up to speed, but when you have leadership that actually speaks truth to the facts, then I think that's helpful in the process.
You talking about me?
I'm talking about you. All of council, in fairness. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries unanimously. No. It's 9:34. We still have 2 items to deal with. We're trying to get out of here. Thank you very much, everyone, for your submissions. Can someone call Councillor Pryor back from the bathroom, please? See you, Mita.
I'm going to tell him you said that.
Councillor Pryor?
Where are all the council candidates going? We're not done yet.
Yeah. Excuse me, candidates for the election, we're still not done yet with the agenda.
Where are you going? If we're
you, Chris.
staying, you're staying.
Can someone please get Councillor Pryor?
Gary's done.
Thank you.
There's Mike.
Mike, Chris.
Come on in, Mike.
Chris Pettigrew.
You're the last one standing.
No, Chris
oh,
Pettigrew
Chris.
back there.
All right, we're going to get back at it. We're going to go back up to
Testing,
our
1,
second
2, 3,
public
4.
hearing. If I could please have quiet. This public hearing is convened pursuant to Part 14, Division 3 of the Local Government Act to allow the public to make representations to council respecting matters contained in District of Squamish Official Community Plan Bylaw number 2500, 2017, Amendment Bylaw General Amendments number 2630, 2018. Everyone present shall be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the proposed bylaw. No one will be discouraged or prevented from making their views known. However, it is important that remarks be restricted to the matters contained in the proposed bylaw. Members of council may ask questions following presentations. However, the function of council at a public hearing is to listen rather than to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw. In considering the proposed bylaw, council has received documents which may influence its decision. These documents are available for review and comment and have been included as part of the Planning Department report, or if received later, handed out at the meeting and included in the public hearing package. If any documents are submitted during the hearing, please feel free to review the document during the hearing by asking staff. Members of the public shall maintain order and quiet and shall not applaud or interrupt any speech or action of members of council or any other person addressing council. I now call on the Planning Department to very succinctly introduce the bylaws.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Matt Gunn. I'm a planner at the District of Squamish.
Sarah McJanet, Community Planner.
As you know, the OCP Bylaw 2500 was adopted in June 2018. During and following the OCP adoption process, staff reviewed policies for errors and omissions and noted corrections and improvements. Wherever possible, these were addressed prior to adoption, but some of the substantive items affecting use and density could not be addressed prior to adoption or were not adequately addressed in Bylaw Amendment 2617, which was brought forward and subsequently adopted in July 2018. To address this issue, staff are proposing Bylaw 2630, which repeals 2617 and introduces the elements of that bylaw with changes to ensure the bylaw is more closely aligned with legislated municipal authority and governing legislation, while still meeting the intended policy directions of the adopted OCP. The topics are listed on the screen. I'm going to go through those briefly. In growth management, a number of changes are proposed to Section 9.2 growth management boundary from the policies that were originally adopted in the OCP. Changes are to align policy with municipal authority and assure future council's decision-making authority is not fettered. In consideration of future residential neighborhood land use, policy references to extraordinary community benefits have been removed along with references to public benefits and replaced with policy requiring evaluation of mitigating and offsetting impacts of future development. Vague policy references have also been removed. The intention has been to maintain the OCP intent to direct growth to within the growth management boundary until the majority of residential development opportunities has been realized, and to ensure any proposal for growth outside the growth management boundary is only considered if appropriate district policies are in place and the cost of peripheral growth can be appropriately mitigated or offset. The remaining growth management policies that will be within the OCP direct all growth within the growth management boundary, direct the majority of residential development to our major growth areas. They identify future residential neighborhoods for long-term growth. These areas are not required to meet housing needs in the next 5 years, are not intended to accommodate growth until substantial completion of residential infill development has occurred. The growth management policies would also consider residential development on future residential neighborhood lands outside the growth management boundary, provided that the population has exceeded 22,500 in the community, that environmental, economic, and social impacts that cannot be mitigated or offset are considered, and that policy precursors have been adopted. It is recognized that council ultimately holds discretionary decision-making authority regarding OCP land use and zoning amendments. There are a number of other minor amendments. Grammatical error in the natural environment section is proposed for correction. The error is a result of referral agency feedback and has no policy impact. 2 additional policies are proposed regarding the Squamish Business Park. They were included in the original sub-area plan and were intended to be included in the OCP. They relate to encouraging open space for employees and visitors. Figure 29 is 29-1 is proposed for replacement to correct an error. The error pertains to the Artisan building and adjacent single unit parcels. The figure reflects land use designations and is intended to match the land use designation map Schedule B. Unfortunately, there's a discrepancy between the two. In the figure, mixed employment will be changed to downtown commercial center. There is an associated change to DPA Schedule M, which I'll discuss in a moment. A housekeeping clarification is proposed for DPA 3 guidelines. The intent is to clarify DPA universal guidelines do not apply to airport development. The changes from general guidelines do not apply to DPA 3 guidelines do not apply. On Schedule B, a correction to the land use designation is proposed for 2 areas. These are indicated by black hatching in the image on the screen. The parcels were designated limited use in the previous OCP. They were mistakenly designated facilities, utilities, and transportation corridor in the new OCP. The intended designation is resource and recreation, which is the replacement for limited use in the new OCP. Finally, staff proposed replacing DPA Schedule M to correct 2 issues. Issue 1 pertains to the DPA applied to the artisan building and the adjacent single unit parcels depicted in figure 29-1, which I mentioned earlier. That correction should be matched with a correlation from DPA 7 downtown south to DPA 5 commercial center. Issue 2 with map schedule M is to expand DPA 10 intensive and restricted industrial from the current extent, which is on the left, to a larger area, which is depicted on the right, to correct a mapping error. Staff intended this less onerous DPA guideline apply to the industrial area. This change means that DPA 10 would apply rather than the more onerous DPA 3, which is the universal guidelines. Finally, regarding notification, the legislated statutory authority for public hearing notifications has been met. Notice was published in the Squamish Chief on September 13th and 20th. Distribution of notices to individuals is not required since the bylaw affects more than 10 parcels and more than 10 owners. The public hearing was included in the district e-news and no comments have been received.
We have received 1 letter. I'll forward it to staff.
Okay, thank you. I am not aware of that, but apologies. That concludes the presentation for the purposes of the public hearing.
Thank you. I'll quickly go to council for any questions, but we do have to take a moment to make sure that this is part of the public record. So let
Yes,
me just,
thank you.
It was from Rachel Shepherd, I believe. Oh, it's here? Okay, then
Okay.
it's in the package. Thank you.
Okay. Apologies about that. I did not see that.
Maybe staff wants to have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
quick look at it, so we can make sure it's addressed in the public hearing. Council, are there any questions for clarification purposes? I don't see any. One, yep, go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
Well, I wonder if staff, once they read Rachel Shepherd's
Yeah,
letter.
no, I'm planning to go
they
back
could-
to them on that, yep. While they look at that, I am going to now invite members of the public to comment on the proposed bylaw change, after which persons affected will be given an opportunity to speak. After confirmed it is your turn, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. And if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization, and please note that speakers will be given up to 5 minutes to address council. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? I got it. Thank you. Please come up, state your name and your address, and if you represent yourself, a business, or an organization.
Hi, I'm Chris Pettingill, 1065 J Crescent. I'm just wondering if someone can clarify the thinking around not unduly fettering council with the OCP. I guess part of my thought is that that's sort of the intent of an OCP, and to ensure that if we are going to put something in the OCP and we want to change it, there should be a public hearing process. And so I'd just like to understand that statement that's come up. Thank you.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you for that question. It is a requirement that the OCP not fetter future council's decision-making processes. Part of the legislative authority and the structure of that authority that we operate within requires that councils have discretion to make decisions around adopting amendments to the OCP, and so we need to adopt a policy that does not fetter future decision-making.
It's the province legislates that councils have discretion, period, so we have to make sure the language reflects that. Fair enough. Did you want to answer Ms. Shepherd's questions?
Yeah, okay, thank you. So the question relates to the consideration or the mandating of the policy precursors in assessing or in decisions around whether consideration should be given to development on future residential neighborhood lands. And she does point out a point where where policies need to be adopted in one piece of the growth management policies, and another section which adds the word consider. And this is a bit of a delicate balance. The intention here is that we are very interested in reflecting the intent to have those policies adopted, but we do need to have some element that ensures the council's decision-making is not fettered. And so the consider does add that element of not fettering council's decision-making.
So council in the future would decide if they need to consider those things?
Exactly. That is the intention.
Councilor Race.
Thank you. And just on that point, so with one of these policies, as an example, does council, a future council, have to wait until it's adopted before considering, going on and considering a development proposal? Or can they just consider that policy before considering a development proposal?
I think adding the consider provides the opportunity for council to consider whether it's going to be adopted.
And the reason I ask that is because we had a conversation on one of those policies, and I forget which one, and it was not related to a discussion about these amendments. And there were several different aspects to the particular policy, and I asked staff at the time whether we'd have to kind of tick them all off before we considered that precursor sort of met, or whether there's some point in the middle of that process that we would consider the precursor for this reason met. So the policy might not be adopted, but it could be far enough along that for the purposes of a proposal with the growth management boundary, we could consider it struck off or ticked off, or however you want to call it.
I could for a second. I think the original intent was to have a more onerous requirement that the policies were adopted, but in our amendments that we're trying to include here to ensure that we're not fettering future council decision-making, we're providing the opportunity, I think along the lines of what you're suggesting or discussing, where council could consider, for example, what part in the process of creating a policy was appropriate for moving forward, or whether it needed to be adopted at all.
And use some discretion depending on the application.
It's, yeah,
Theoretically.
injecting an element of discretion and respecting the political, or the provincial authority that, the structure of the provincial authority.
Thank you. I'll go to the public again. Is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? I'll ask council if they have any questions. I'll ask for a second time, is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? And I'll ask for a third and final time, is there anyone who would like to speak at this public hearing? There being no further speakers, I will remind everyone that council can't receive any new information or have any discussions about the bylaw after the public hearing is closed, and that council can consider third reading after this public hearing is closed, and I now declare the public hearing closed. Thank you. Moving on in the agenda, we have our bylaws. Actually, I'm going to just jump ahead, sorry. Council can consider third reading now. Moved by Councillor Blackman-Wolf, seconded by Councillor Race. Does anyone want to speak to this?
Well, I'll just say that even with the proposed amendments, that I still think it's a really good OCP. I think staff did a fantastic job engaging the community, and it will serve our community very, very well in the future.
Ditto. Yes, it is third and adoption. My apologies. You're moving third
Yes.
and adoption. Do we have to do them separately, Robin? We can do one motion for third and adoption? It's been moved and seconded by Councillor Race. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries unanimously. Moving back in the agenda, we're going to go to first three readings of our District of Squamish 5-year financial plan bylaw, number 2589, amendment bylaw 2631, 2018. Christine, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Heinzman, Council. My name is Christine Matthews. I'm Chief Financial Officer for the district. Before you this evening is the financial plan amendment. We are looking for 3 readings. Just a reminder to Council that all financial plans require some form of public consultation. So we will be advertising through our normal channels the amendments proposed here, and we will be seeking feedback from the public through our usual channels, which can include mail, walk-in, through our online channels of council@squamish.ca, our Twitter accounts at Squamish Town, and Facebook, District of Squamish. The 2 amendments in question. One is the top-up of an emergency expenditure that we were required to undertake for the clarifiers out at the wastewater treatment plant. We had originally budgeted $200,000 for that emergency expenditure back in January, and we had to top that up to $98,000. That's coming from the sewer reserve. Second amendment is for the affordable rental housing construction project. We're for site preparation. We had originally budgeted $600,000 for
This is for the
works.
Helping Hands.
Yes, sorry, did
Yeah.
I say something else?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So this is for site preparation for Helping Hands site, and we had originally budgeted $600,000 to do oil grit and various site preparation works. The through tenders and additional site preparation, that total bill now is $1,010,000. So that we have to top up the financial plan by $410,000. The initial $600,000 was from debt. Staff is proposing that an additional $300,000 come from housing reserve and another $110,000 from accumulated surplus to make up the $410,000 difference. The reason we are going back to the affordable housing reserve is that we already had planned a $300,000 expenditure from the housing reserve this year, but due to grant funds and no additional works required, we're able to repurpose that. Secondly, in discussions with the engineering department, the actual oil grit separator is a $300,000 bill. Everything else to do with the $1 million expenditure is for site preparation for the housing project. So we are recommending that funding source. If there are no other questions, I will just pass back.
Any questions? I don't see anything. Actually, I have a question. I don't see any, but I have one up here. I thought there was some funding to the oil separation from a CAC from the Aqua / that development. Is that calibrated in the in some of the funding for this?
You know what, and actually, Council, I'm sorry, I'd have to check that. The notes that Danishka's left me is that it was $600,000 from borrowing. Was there an additional?
Yes, my recollection is that was in the tune of it's either $45,000 or $65,000, and that is in the funding formula.
That is part, yeah.
In the current financial plan, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. I will move this. Is there a second? There's seconded by Councillor Reyes. I'll speak to it briefly. I thought the report was excellent. I think one of the things that you articulated very clearly was this is a transparent and legislated process that governments have to do. We have to account for everything we spend, and if we change our mind on what we spend it on, we have to re-amend the bylaw and go through the public process again. So that's an important thing for those people who are running for election to understand, but it's also important for the community to understand that we can't just go and spend money randomly. If we divert money from something else, or if we need to spend extra money on a project, we have to amend our financial plan bylaw and go through that process all over again. And it's literally every cent we spend is available for the public to see and understand and to respond to if they so wish. Councillor Chappelle and then Councillor Black-and-Wolf.
Thank you, and this also speaks to, I also thought the report was excellent. Thank you very much, Christine. I think the due diligence put into where we find the financing is very sound. I also want to speak to the fact that the developer in the first place should have been held responsible for this in the original document, and our engineering standards at the time really were not up to snuff, and those problems have also been corrected. I don't think we've had those issues in the community, but that particular development at that time was not rigorously funded for engineering and has seen a lot of issues that in the future the current community will end up having to deal with.
I'd like to focus on the bylaws. Thank you, Councillor Blackman-Wolf.
Yes, with regards to the Under One Roof project, I'd like to say that, you know, it's super important that we keep up with that, and that project is going to be a legacy for our community for many, many, many years. And I'm also really fortunate that we as a council did, at the beginning of our term, have a community amenity contribution policy that has meant that we do have reserves in place from the Affordable Housing Reserve to put towards things like that. So in this particular instance, it's not going to affect taxation. On the other hand, good advice for potential candidates for council as well as for the public in general is to, next time you're wondering why your taxes go up, talk to your local contractor and trades and talk to them about how much prices have gone up.
Okay, we're getting a little off topic.
No, but I mean, I think it is worth saying, just because that is one of our biggest expenditures is sort of capital projects, and that's one of our biggest cost drivers. So it's really the thing to pay attention from. It's definitely not things like staff salaries or councilor salaries.
Just a reminder to council, if we go more than 4 minutes, we have to get a motion to extend, so. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We're not going to consider the third readings from the public hearing earlier tonight. We have one last-minute request from the UBC Clean Energy Research Center, very similar to a request for a letter of support that we issued them. It's actually the exact same letter of support, except it's to a different, another funding possibility. So I'll move that. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Blackman-Wolf. I don't see any hands. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? And I'll look for, I'm going to move termination of my last public hearing. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Schwell. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone.